Amber, I want to start this off with a quote from one of your Substack articles.
Sweet.
It was, "You don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are."
Ooh, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of places that I could take that. I mean, our identities and I mean, just us as human beings are constantly filtering the world in ways that we don't necessarily realize. That filtering process is rooted through certain like neural mechanisms and psychological mechanisms that aren't necessarily being consciously investigated. For example, is take somebody and they believe um, they are not charismatic. Say that person is actually charismatic on a
Yeah.
more objective level. That person will ignore every single person that smiles at them, every single person that kind of pays attention to them, every person that thinks what they're saying is interesting. And what they will notice is the one person who actually ignores them or like looks away, right? And so, what does this actually mean? That person is subconsciously filtering out all of the things that are contradictory to their self concept,
Right.
which is I'm not charismatic, and an inner world belief or an identity belief, a belief about oneself, which would be the foundation of the inner world, right? The way that I conceptualize the inner world, and which essentially navigates or is the core navigating piece of your entire life is composed of your identity at the bottom, which is the foundation, and then there's your beliefs, there's the emotions
Yeah.
above those, and then there's the actions, which is what modern day society happens to actually focus on a lot. And so our identities are, the identity layer is composed of beliefs that we have about ourselves, right? And these typically start with I am this, I am that, I am not charismatic, I am healthy, I'm fat. And based off of those identity beliefs that we have, we are actually constantly filtering the outer world, right? Like things on the outside according to those beliefs.
Yeah.
Another example of this is you take a person who, let's say, believes that they are fat, or just believes that they are, or doesn't care too much about the health world as it is. You take another person who believes that they are healthy, and and naturally they will care about things within the nutrition world, etc. Take them, put them in a restaurant, and I mean this might have happened with you too, but this happens with me a lot, or I've noticed this happen with me as my identity began to change.
Yeah.
Namely, that if you look at a menu and there are like at the restaurant,
Yeah.
there are like a lot of options
Right.
to choose from, right? I remember very clearly having always navigated to the burger section of the menu, right? And this was one specifically, I was struggling with bulimia.
Yeah.
I had a very difficult time with bulimia because there was, and it's something that I speak about in the Substack as well, where
Sure.
I was constantly trying to build this respectable physique, which I was able to build, but I was also constantly regressing. And I didn't really know why, but it was interesting that like during this period, uh, at the restaurant, right,
Yeah.
I would just, without even noticing, I would just skip over everything, and I would just notice certain items on the food menu, and I would just blur out the rest. And back to what I was saying about like the healthy person, right? When I became a healthier person who actually identified as a healthy person who cares about his health, I began to filter out, for example, the unhealthy options on the menu without actually, and there was no, the key thing here is there's no conscious intention there. It's completely happening unconsciously,
Totally.
right? And so like what you begin to realize here is that like the unconscious or the subconscious is driving our conscious behaviors in ways that we don't realize. And it's very, very weird to think, right? Like even the way that I'm moving my hands, the way that I speak, the next word that comes out of my mouth
Yeah.
is just the result or the manifest symptom of things that are going on the subconscious layer, right? So in that way, and to kind of loop it back to where we started, your outer world, right? What you see, what you observe, what you have
Yeah.
is is just a reflection of the inner world. And this is why you can take two people, you put them in the same economy. One person sees all he sees is opportunity, or all she or he sees is opportunity, or like this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
And you put another person in the same economy, and they're like, we're fucked, right? And the reason why is I mean the key thing here is that they're looking at the exact same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like there's no difference in the outer world. The only difference is the inner world, right? And so that's when you begin to realize that this dichotomy between inner and outer world is illusory, and it's not actually real in the ways that we think it is.
Yeah, well, I can definitely relate to the two examples that you gave
Mhm.
with like feeling like you're not charismatic and also like the example of like, identifying as a healthy person. Like for example, I grew up as an only child and like I barely had any friends when I was like a younger kid. So I think I grew up with like the feedback loop and the belief that like, oh, I'm not charismatic at all. Nobody likes me. So I developed this habit of like only noticing the people that don't like me, only noticing like the weird comments that people make, rather than the people who actually do like
Mhm.
me or the people who actually are praising me. It's like I like even even though like I don't know, let's say out of like one out of every 20 people I interacted with actually didn't like me, or like one out of every 100
Yeah.
people, that was all I noticed.
Exactly.
And then that just kept reaffirming that belief that I was uncharismatic. And it was like a vicious cycle that I trapped myself in. And then with the health part, like I remember like I definitely had points in my life where I was just like starving myself, like barely ate, trying to be as skinny as possible. And then every time there was like the tiniest bit of fat on my face or like in my stomach, that was like all I noticed. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm looking so fat.
Well, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
precisely what body dysmorphia is,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
you take the person who has, I mean, from the regular eye, I guess, like the layman's perspective,
Yeah.
they seem to look completely fine,
Yeah.
right? Or even perhaps they look really good, right? This was something that happened with me a lot,
Yeah.
where yeah, I was, I mean, I had fucking ab veins at one point, right? And
Yeah.
and I usually do during the summer, but it's so crazy that even during these periods where I am abnormally lean, or
Yeah.
like I am truly anomalous within the population, I still managed to find a reason as to why I actually wasn't as lean as I thought I was, right? Which is body dysmorphia. And this was again the inner world, um, my inner world, my belief that there's no, like, I'm not lean, there's no way like I'm actually a fat person. These deep rooted beliefs that
Yeah.
have kind of solidified and been very entrenched within our psyches. They find their ways out, right, to project on the outer world. And so yeah, that was very much the case with me as well. And that's what led to the cycle of binging and purging, and bulimia. So yeah.
So what would someone's life look like if, let's say, they are in a similar position to where I was and where you were, like they are a naturally charismatic person, but they have this belief they're not charismatic, so that's all they see in the world. Or like they have such a great physique, but they believe that they're fat, so like that belief just hijacks their mind. And let's say they don't do anything about those negative beliefs. What would their life look like 10, 20 years down the line?
Yikes. um Not too pretty. If you don't find a way to break this loop that we find ourselves in,
Yeah.
and loop of, I mean, seemingly endless loops of just negative thoughts, it only seems to just get worse,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, I think the most insidious part here is that these beliefs actually just become further entrenched and further solidified within the brain, literally within, like, you can just, I mean, on a neurological level,
Yeah.
right? Um, and just on a more existential level as well, is we just truly begin to believe these things about ourselves. And this is where you begin to see things like learned helplessness and people who have a very, very difficult time trying to uh, climb their way out of these, like, seemingly endless voids, right? So um, yeah, and what you begin to see is that your beliefs really do create your reality, right? Like, and not just in this weird woo way, but in a very real way. Like, what I've realized about identity is the way that I see identity kind of functions is that if you, I mean, first of all, there's this sort of principle of the mind, this dualistic principle of the mind. It's impossible to know something in isolation. For example, you can't know the concept light without knowing what dark is,
Yeah.
right? Like, just try to think of light without knowing what dark is. It's just incomprehensible, right? Like, you can't know what healthy is without knowing what, for example, unhealthy is.
Right.
Um, e- e- Everything exists within a spectrum,
Right. Yeah.
and like a sort of dualistic spectrum, right?
Yeah.
For everything that's like light, there's heavy. I could go on. And so in the same way, when we begin to make statements about ourselves, right, they also exist on this spectrum, this dualistic spectrum. And so if I say that I am not healthy, right, that is opposed to the belief I am healthy. And so if you take a set of scales, like just like a metaphorical set of
Yeah.
scales, every single time that I kind of repeat the belief I am healthy, or I am not healthy, let's say, the negative belief here, I'm essentially, let's say, stacking a rock, right? That belief, let's say, represents a rock that I am kind of putting on that side of the scale.
Yeah.
And we have scales for every single belief that can essentially exist about ourselves on an identity level.
Right.
So I have a belief set of skills for my charisma levels. I have a
Yeah.
belief set of skills for how successful I think I'm going to become, and just for beliefs about the outer world. Do I think money is hard or easy to obtain? Do I think that I should protect myself within the context of relationships because I got heartbroken before, right? Um, eh, and these could go on, and again, these are just like these are examples that can be used for anyone,
Yeah.
right? And the the way to see identity is that our identities are I think this is like a conception that I don't know if it's completely accurate. I mean, this is something that I obviously struggle with a lot. Is identity is such a loaded term, but one way that I have liked to conceptualize identity on a more um, practical level
Yeah.
is it's the total sum of all of these skills put together.
Right. Yeah.
Every single set of skills, every belief that you have about the outer world and the inner world and yourself are put together, compose your identity. And so what you begin to see is that with the repetition of certain beliefs. So let's say, for example, I mean, actually importantly here, and I'm glad that I'm remembering this, is that the brain cannot distinguish between an event that happens in real life and an event that happens within the theater of the mind.
Yeah.
This is very important, and it's just neurologically true.
Yeah.
And this is why when you actually imagine yourself, um, or if you recall a traumatic experience,
Yeah.
or you recall a very happy experience,
Yeah.
and you truly envision it, right? You close your eyes, you think about it, you will actually feel the associated emotions with that memory or
True.
experience, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if I actually think about a very traumatic time, or if I saw a bear, let's say in the forest, um, I will actually feel a surge of adrenaline, right? And like dopamine and all of these different neurochemicals. There will be a cocktail and a very similar cocktail to the one that was actually produced during the actual event
Yeah.
itself,
For
right?
sure.
So with that said is when now I recall a certain memory about myself or my past. Let's say that I believe that I had an experience, let's say, and this was actually a story that I heard, but it does the job here quite well. Let's say I was writing down a math problem and I got it wrong. I messed it up and the teacher calls me dumb. That only happened one time. Right? Let's say like there was one rock that was placed on that side of the scale.
You're right. Yeah.
However, that belief can be very traumatic, and I can continue to repeat that belief in my head because the brain can't actually differentiate between the two, right? Every single time that I repeat that belief, I'm actually adding a rock onto that side of the scale. And so this continues to happen. Let's say I've now repeated the belief I've repeated that memory 1,000 times with the teacher. I've stacked 1,000 rocks on that side of the scale with regards to that specific part of my identity, namely that I'm dumb, right? And again, this is dualistic. So like that's in contrast to I'm smart or intelligent or capable, right?
Yeah.
Because again, capable, the notion of capability is intimately tied with intelligence. And if somebody believes that they are unintelligent, oftentimes you'll see that they don't think they're very capable either, right? So
Yeah.
and so importantly is once I've stacked so many rocks on that side, I won't when I see a math problem, I won't be able to do math. Like I will look at a math problem and immediately I'll think I'm dumb. Like I can't do this. I can't do this because that belief has become so entrenched within my psyche that it has literally manifested in the outer world and it has
Yeah.
become real life, right? So our beliefs do become reality.
Yeah.
They really do. And this is just true. And this is true completely. And this is, I guess, like the main finding of that specific subset that you were referencing, which is your identity is a thermostat. right? And it acts as a psychological thermostat where whatever temperature your identity is set to, the outer world, right? And so if this wasn't clear for anyone that's watching this, the outer world is like could be what does your physique look like right now?
Yeah.
Like physically,
Yeah.
how much money do you have in your bank account?
Right.
Right? What do your relationships look like?
Yeah.
That those will always match the inner world precisely. And it's uncanny and it's so real. And this is what I've realized is as soon as you begin to change the temperature of your identity, then the outer world just matches that. And your identity again is the foundation of your inner world. So change the outer the geometry of the outer world, the geometry of the outer world will always match that of the geometry of the inner world.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is what you begin to see. And so yeah, like it all kind of ties together where our beliefs become very, very entrenched and they really do um guide our behaviors in ways that I feel like most people just seem to ignore. They just think they're that way, right? People just think, oh, like I'm dumb, right? Like, I just can't do math. But they never have actually examined like where does that belief actually come from? I was speaking to a friend recently and she said I think I was asking her about content
Yeah.
and she just said, I'm just not a creative person. Like, I'm just not creative. And I mean, like, that's such a, I guess, like, silly belief to have about one. It's like, what do you mean you're not?
Yeah.
It's like, and the thing is creativity definitely used to be there, right? Like, as a child, at least.
Yeah.
She used to definitely have creativity.
Yeah.
So it's not, so something has gone on, right? There is now this evident rift between who she used to be and who she is now, namely who she believes that she is now and who she actually is on a deeper, more existential level. And I was like, what do you mean that you're not creative? And going back to your first question is, and I had given her several examples of ways that she was very like weirdly creative around,
Yeah. Yeah.
but she didn't even realize, right? She completely filtered those out. Right. And so she didn't even realize any of the times that she had actually been creative. And she only noticed times where she wasn't creative. And that deep rooted belief that she was not creative led to her being unable to just produce content. And until she actually examined where did that belief come from, who told me that, right? Was it one of her parents? Was it her friends? How many times did she repeat that belief about
Yeah.
her?
Yeah.
How many rocks were stacked on that side of the scale? And once she began to examine that, she began to realize that it was, again, just an illusion of sorts, right? So it's very interesting how once you just begin to inspect these beliefs that we have about ourselves, the outer world begins to change, right? And again, like her outer world, right, was matching her inner world. And it was a reflection of her inner world as we started, where she believed she wasn't creative. She had this deep-rooted belief that she wasn't creative.
Yeah.
That led to that was fed into her subconscious filter of the world, right? And she filtered out now any evidence that would contradict that belief, because in the end, it's something that's very important about the psyche and the brain is that the brain does not care about truth, objective truth, what's true about the world. It only cares about coherence, right? That's what it cares about. It only cares about being true to itself. If I believe that I am not creative, my brain will do whatever it can to confirm that belief. Why? Because it is energetically inefficient to do anything, to change my self schema. That is an energetically demanding process,
Yeah.
right? And evolutionarily speaking, as human beings, we want to conserve that energy. So yeah, that's why the self concept can be, or trying to change one's identity and self concept can be a very sticky concept or a sticky process where namely your identity is very sticky,
Yeah.
right? And that's normal. And there's going to be a period of or several periods of resistance when you're trying to change that. And yeah, when you kind of breach the perimeter of your old self, also when it comes to subconscious mind, is it will see that it will see that as a sort of emergency or fire alarm,
Yeah.
right? And it'll be like, fuck no. Like, what are we doing here? It's like, this is not who we are. This is not familiar. This is not energetically efficient. And yeah, it will do whatever it can to sabotage that let's say if it's a positive change they're trying to make,
Yeah.
that change. It will do whatever it can. Right. So Yeah.
Yeah, that's uh, I can talk about this stuff all day. Like I find that so interesting. But where so one thing that's really coming to my mind is the fact like so many people they either haven't thought of or don't even have any idea of like the unconscious things that are holding them back. Like a lot of people might actually be into this kind of stuff, learning about their identity, learning about their beliefs, but then they still have self-sabotaging patterns and like limiting beliefs in their unconscious that they don't even know about. So how could someone figure out what those are?
Hmm. Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, so I guess like the parts of ourselves that we've suppressed or rejected. This is what Carl Jung would call the shadow.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we begin life and we go through our childhoods learning that certain things are good and certain things are bad,
Yeah.
right? That we should be that we should be a certain way, that we should associate with certain behaviors, beliefs, inclinations, and certain things we shouldn't be like, right? And certain things we just shouldn't be like. Like we should be sociopaths. The cake, we shouldn't eat all the cake, right? You should only eat a part of the cake. There are certain things that we learn through again like socialization and trauma,
Yeah.
uh, and the parts of ourselves that we reject or disown or suppress collect into this autonomous complex, as Jung
Yeah.
calls it, and I'll go into that in a bit. And he calls this the shadow.
Yeah.
And so the shadow is also, as Jung says, it's exactly what we don't want to be or associate with. Yeah, and so a good example of and relating exactly to what you said is, let's say there's a girl named Joan, and Joan, naturally, her authentic self is, as a child, is very expressive, and she likes to dance, and she likes to wear like tutus,
Yeah.
etc. And Joan, through the socialization process within school, for example, begins to learn that, or her friends, let's say, begin to like whisper about her, and she notices her
Yeah.
friends are kind of whispering about her, and she can tell that it's for her. They make it clear that it's for her being weird,
Yeah.
and she eventually kind of meets this junction where she has to choose: do I continue to perform in my, or not perform, but express myself in an authentic way, or do I potentially suppress these aspects of myself, namely the expressiveness, create not necessarily creative, but expressive, more loud, likes to be the center of attention, but not in an egotistic way, in a
Yeah.
healthy way. We all like that to an extent. Does she suppress those things? And to the child mind, let's say she's in grade one, or just she's just a very young child. To the child mind, social ostracization, or just being ostracized from the group,
Yeah.
um, is seen to be akin to death, right?
Totally.
And you can remember this like in school as well. It's like the last thing that you want is to be an part of the not to be a part of the group,
Yeah.
right? And this is just evolutionarily encoded into our genetics, and so she chooses to suppress those traits. So Joan, over time, she grows up, and let's say she actually begins to, not only has she now suppressed these parts of herself, but she also begins to resent others who display these parts of herself. So she won't like naturally expressive people, not charismatic, but people who stand out in a crowd,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And she has a weird sort of distaste and um I wouldn't say hatred, but resentment.
Yeah. Resentment. That's a great word.
Yeah, towards these people, and she doesn't necessarily know where it comes from, right? Like she's essentially forgotten about. Let's say like this is like now, just like when she's in her 20s,
Yeah.
she she just doesn't identify as an expressive person. She says that I would never be an expressive Um, I don't know how people can like go on dance shows, and she says all these things, right, about other people, not knowing that she's on it, that she's attacking these disowned parts of herself.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and weirdly enough, though, is Joan, let's say, she actually finds herself attracted to Broadway shows, for example, but she watches them, but she always says, "I could never do that. Like I could never, um, be like a Broadway actress." And so Joan eventually tries to find, let's say, a passion or pursuit in her life
Yeah.
that, uh, I mean, I mean, even before that, like she begins to feel, I guess, an emptiness, but she doesn't know
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
because she can't find a thing. She happens to feel like she's missing something, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and so she tries all these different types of job or career paths and jobs, and none of them seem to fit in the way that she wants them to. And this leads eventually to Joan feeling like meaningless, like that she doesn't have any sort of meaning within her life because she doesn't realize that she's overlooking the one thing that she actually has it has a natural sort of inclination towards,
Yeah.
right, which is like like to be an actress or a dancer or and so on, and so she suppresses those all those impulses and beliefs, and she doesn't know it, and that can lead to, like, for example, like depression, right? And so the way that this, I mean, and just kind of connecting back to your question, which was how, like, what you were asking how
There's the unconscious limiting beliefs.
yeah, exactly, right. And so we exactly, and the way that this relates to like limiting beliefs as well is that we can sort of have, I mean, limiting beliefs are very interesting,
Yeah.
but in the case of Joan, for example, is that this, I mean, in many ways limits her life,
Yeah.
right? In a lot of ways, she's unable to actually pursue what she is meant to pursue, right? And so in the same way with limiting beliefs as well, is that we also suppress parts of ourselves um, that are, and this would be like importantly about the something important about the shadow is that it doesn't only contain bad or negative things about us, right? It can also contain good things about us, right? Like it's everything that we've suppressed. And so if there are certain parts of ourselves that are healthy in many
Yeah.
ways, right? Like assertiveness or right, but we might, for example, suppress assertiveness because it could be seen as like aggressive, right? Like in a negative way. If we are suppressing these healthy parts of ourselves into the shadow, I mean, first of all, these would be named the gold in the shadow,
Yeah.
as Young would call it, and the goal here is to find the gold and to try to bring that first of all, try to find the good things that you've suppressed and that you've rejected in yourself, and to kind of bring those into conscious awareness. And that in itself is, I mean, a process we can get into later, but is called integration.
Love to.
Yeah. So, and many of those suppressed parts of ourselves can manifest as limiting beliefs. Um, yeah, and again, like the important thing is it takes a level of introspection and patience and time to find out what those beliefs actually look like about ourselves. Um, and yeah, and how they can very much, again, like I said previously, truly become reality, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so watching your content actually, I've been able to learn so much about my shadow side. And something pretty interesting that I've learned lately, or I guess I didn't really learn it, like it's always been part of me, but it's like I really suppressed it, has been my naturally competitive side and like my naturally disagreeable side. It's like I like deep down, I like I'm a very like competitive person. I always want to be the best at like every single thing I do. And like I'm also like very like disagreeable and like high agency. I I don't really rely on anybody else for my value and naturally just have this impulse to do whatever I want. And I think those are great things, but they've been suppressed so long because for some reason back in early childhood, I thought like, oh, these are bad. And like I can't show this part of myself. And then I also think, at least in my case, like me suppress my shadow also created like this feeling of like underlying stress.
Mhm. Oh, of course.
Yeah. And I just always felt this baseline of stress for a reason that I could never even explain.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So, did you say that you suppressed your disagreeableness?
Yeah, definitely.
And would you
For sure.
say, and so would you say that you have now become disagreeable, or like you've kind of you've improved on that, or do you still find it that it's an issue that you still deal with now?
I think yes, I am still I am still dealing with it. But I also think like it's something I'm getting better with each day. And then also doing one of the tactics that you mentioned, like every single night, writing down everything that you did that was in line with your identity. Like I've been doing that, but with my shadow side, I'm writing down like every single thing I did, like no matter how big or small, that's like in line with my shadow. And I've noticed like ever since I started doing that, I've noticed this a lot more. And another weird pattern I've kind of noticed is like it's my shadow is coming out a lot more with like people who I just meet rather than people who I've known for a while. And I find if like
How so?
one thing I notice is like if I ever like see my friends from high school, like I find myself like I kind of feel weird about like my success and like I feel like kind of weird to be confident for some reason. Like I kind of feel my body like naturally contracting. But then with some like a lot of the time with someone who I just meet, I'm like I naturally feel way more confident and like show my more disagreeable side a lot more.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so I think it's first of all important to be careful with how you use the term shadow. So,
Mm.
remember that it refers to what you've rejected in yourself. I think the example that you use is quite interesting with your old friends. Would I say that it's a mechanism of the shadow? I don't know. It really just depends. I mean, a good example of how the shadow can manifest is um I'll just give a quick example, and then I'll bring it back. Let's say there's a kid named Johnny,
Yeah.
and Johnny as a young boy, again, his authentic self, right? So we are all born in a way authentic, right? Like
Yeah.
with our authentic natural temperament endowments, as you might call them. So our natural dispositions, our inclinations, right? We all as kids, naturally inclined towards certain things, right? But with time, again, we learn that some things aren't good, right? Whether that's through bullying or like the socialization process, whatever it is, we learn that these things might not be good, and we suppress these
Yeah.
things. And so Johnny, just like any other kid, a 5-year-old kid, let's say, he when let's say like he scrapes his knee and he begins to cry, and he goes to his mom to cry. Okay, this is a very normal thing for a 5-year-old boy to do, is to go and cry to their mom. However, Johnny's dad, for some reason, is very irritated about the fact that his son is crying. Right,
Yeah.
his dad is of the ultra stoic, let's say hypermasculine, psychographic of male, and Johnny grows up, and over time, he begins to slowly learn that showing emotion, sadness, is bad. So, like, let's say he loses a baseball game, Johnny begins to cry about losing the baseball game, and his dad says, you can't, like why are you crying? Like there's no reason. Like do you think the other team respects like loser
Yeah.
crybabies, let's say. Um, and this kind of cycle goes on and on, right, with his dad, and his dad is constantly kind of pushing away this more soft part of Johnny.
Yeah.
Now there indeed was, let's say, a reckoning with Johnny, and again, it's just a hypothetical character. All these characters are, um, or fictional characters, where Johnny is now with his mom. His dog died, and Johnny's crying again. Johnny's dad comes home drunk, and Johnny's dad is extremely irritated this time, and he beats Johnny while he's crying until Johnny stops crying. So until he begins to whimper. What does Johnny learn in this moment? He is now associated showing emotion and sadness and softness with danger or death
Yeah.
in a way, right? And again, what's important about the childlike mind is that it sees things in black and white. So there's no nuance. Johnny can't really think, oh, like if I'm this sad, then there's this amount of danger. No, it simply thinks that showing emotion equals death slash danger. This is what his dad has done. And so this would represent what Robert Johnson in the book Owning Your Shadow, what he would call a collision moment, where Johnny's ego, right? And again, the ego is the computer program that you play life through. It's what makes, when you say the word I am or me, or like I am Amor and you are Sam, when you say the word I,
Yeah.
what makes that coherent is the fact that you have an ego. Everything seems to be happening from over here. The ego is sort of the captain of the ship, right? Eh, of, let's say, consciousness. It's kind of what's sent the center, the center part of consciousness, as to which the other parts, like our thoughts and emotions, kind of relate back to. It's the center.
Yeah.
Um, and so Johnny's ego, let's say, has, and a good way to kind of visualize this that I thought of was, let's say he starts as, or just any ego, right? And again, let's say when we're born, the ego, this thing called the ego or ourselves, are just completely full. It's a fully authentic version of
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And it will hit the boundaries of your environment a lot of times, because, and these would be called collision moments. They could be more violent, like Johnny's, let's say, dad beating him, where his ego kind of knocks into this wall, and a part of that ego, let's say it's a line, kind of
Mm.
falls off, and then it goes the other way, and then like another experience happens, and then like part of his ego falls off there, and then another thing. And for example, with Joan, right, a collision moment for her would be the bullying, that memory of her being bullied for being expressive. So her ego has now kind of collided into her environment, a collision moment, and part of her authentic self has also kind of fallen away. Importantly, is these authentic parts of ourselves don't just vanish; they collect, and that's what the shadow is. Is these authentic parts of ourselves collect over time into what is the shadow. And so over time, after all of these sort of collisions with your environment, is what you know as Sam, right? You are the final product of all of those collisions throughout your childhood and your upbringing, and now you're like this very thin line, which is which would be your ego, and then your persona would be the personality that you present to the world. And you have multiple personas. The persona that you have with me right now is different from the persona that you have when you're alone at home, which is different to the persona that you have with your mom, which is different to the persona that you might have with your girlfriend if you have a girlfriend. Um, we have different sort of personalities and masks that we put onto the world. Um, and so back to the story of Johnny is this collision moment. Uh, Represents a critical moment where Johnny has now learned that expressing sadness is, and expressing emotion is dangerous and bad, and so that gets relegated to the unconscious, the shadow.
Right.
The part of the brain that would be associated with this would be the anterior cingulate cortex, which detects sort of mismatch between your expectations and actually what happens. And so Johnny expects that like showing emotion is fine, and then he realizes that it is not okay. And then the anterior cortex is very good at being like, okay, what the fuck just happened? We are going to, I mean, we've detected massive mismatch, and we're going to be suppressing that part of ourselves for forever, essentially. So Johnny grows up, learns that, and he grows up to be just like his dad, a hypermasculine, ultra stoic male, and he actually becomes like a CEO, right? And he, or maybe like a military like commander, or a certain sort of job figure that aligns with those traits,
For sure.
right? Because like those traits are kind of, let's say like he's a CEO, those traits are favored for within the market, but within that, um, what would it be? That sphere of work,
Yeah.
or that sphere of the world. And however, Johnny, let's say let's say Johnny has a girlfriend, or a relationship, he's unable, she realizes that he's unable to actually access his sadness and his softer, the softer side of himself. And she asks him like, Johnny, I can't access you emotionally. Like, why are you not being emotional? And he doesn't realize why, but he gets very triggered for some reason. And again, he doesn't remember the memory, importantly, of his dad, right? He's completely blocked it out. And this is very normal, by the way, is to block out these more traumatic memories.
Mm.
And so again, like over time, Johnny's girlfriend has an issue with it. Like she's sitting down at, let's say, at her like mother's deathbed. Let's say her mother dies, and Johnny just doesn't know how to sit in the sadness with her, and he's trying to like figure it out, like trying to like just like come up with like a logical solution to make her feel better. When all she needs is someone to kind of just sit there with her and just be sad. He's unable to do that, and this again, the cycle continues, and then he kind of is met at this junction where either he his girlfriend essentially breaks up with him, or he needs to do the actual, like the conscious, the shadow war, as you would call it, to figure out why am I like this. Importantly, and so that now back to what we were saying is the and interestingly enough is, let's say like Johnny's at a dinner table with all of his friends, and he sees that there's a 5-year-old boy crying. He gets extremely pissed, weirdly pissed, but he doesn't really know why, right? So he says, like all of his friends are at the dinner table with him, and he's just like, why is that kid such a bitch? Like there's this weird sort of um uh intense affect that he's feeling, and that is a diagnostic feature of the shadow, is specifically how intense the emotional reaction you have to a certain person is, right? Or a certain thing is. So if you feel a lot of disgust towards certain people or a certain type of person, or hatred or resentment, that is a very good diagnostic tool as to what your shadow actually looks like. And so Johnny, for example, gets very triggered when there are boys that or he sees a boy cry to his mom, and he just is like talking to his friends, and his friend, and he's like, what a little like bitch, like again, like it's very harsh language.
Yeah.
And his friends are almost thrown off by it. Like they're at the restaurant, for example, and they're like, I mean, like it's a little bit annoying that the boy's crying, but it's not that bad, dude. Like this is it's like it's you don't need to like freak out about it. But like Johnny just has this weird, like again, compulsive attraction to the boy. That's also another diagnostic feature of the shadow, is not just the intensity of the emotion, but the compulsive nature of the behavior. So like he just notices it with with and he can't help it. He can't help but notice it, right? And so, interesting enough, is that is a very, very good uh, diagnostic tool to use as to discover what your shadow looks like. And so, um, yeah, and so over time, and I mean, another interesting point here too is the somatic manifestation of a behavior. So let's say like Johnny, like when Johnny is asked to be emotional with his girlfriend,
Yeah.
his shoulders like rise up like this, right? Why are they doing that? It's because like that's the exact thing that he did when his dad beat him, right? It's like they actually rose up. So like that's also a very interesting thing. You can use these sort of like it's very interesting in how the body can keep score. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score,
Yeah.
in how the body can keep score and remember the trauma in ways that the mind cannot recall, right? Because remembering something and recalling something are two different things, right? He might not be able to recall the memory, actually see the like live the experience, but his body remembers it. And so like if you think about any sort of tension that you have in your body, whether it's in your chest or in your back or in your jaw, that can be a very useful tool as to figure out what your shadow looks like. But I would say even a better way of going about it is to really find out what is in other people that trigger you, and again give rise to this very intense emotion, whether it's disgust or rage. That almost always is an indicator as to something that may have happened in your past, something that you may have rejected in yourself. An example of this with me was when I started doing shadow work. I started doing shadow work about like 3 years ago, and I would get when I would explain things to people, I would get really annoyed when they wouldn't understand. Like when I would explain, like let's say like science, biology, neuroscience, whatever it was, I would just get like super annoyed when they wouldn't understand. I don't know why. I didn't know why though. And when I began to do shadow work, uh, I remember that again, it was it's very interesting how this can happen, but you'll just like have it access, you'll just enter this corridor of your mind, you'll get thrown into this memory. And for me, it was a memory of me and my dad learning math at the dinner table
Yeah.
and him raging at me when I wouldn't get it right, right? Like, and luckily he didn't do anything physical, but he would just get really pissed. And I kind of learned that not understanding is bad, right? That is bad. And so when other people would display that sort of same thing, I would get really angry. But I didn't know why. And all those types of people, for some reason, just triggered me. And when somebody wouldn't understand, in my head, I would have this weird mental dialogue of like, are you fucking retarded? Like, like it would be really bad. And only when I began to investigate that did I realize that there was actually there was like, let's say like a micro trauma, right? Or like there was something that had actually been there was a part of myself that I had suppressed, which namely was the child who didn't know or didn't understand things. I suppressed that part of myself. I hated that child because, again, being that if I because that child brought me pain, let's say, at the dinner table.
Yeah.
So I began to resent that child, and we don't like these parts of ourselves. And that's why shadow projection can also feel very good, is you can almost punish this part of yourself that you hate, but onto another person, right? They begin to embody that part of yourself. For example, let's say I was explaining something to a friend. My friend is now embodying that child version of me that I don't like, and I can like get really annoyed with them. And when I actually do get annoyed with them, and I tell them like, "Are you serious? How do you not understand this?" It feels good. That's the thing about shadow projection, is it feels good, and that's the disturbing thing about shadow projection, right? And so, importantly, is you can also reverse this so that if you analyze the type of people that you actually look up to or admire, right, or see as idols, and you try to actually find the exact thing that you admire in them, what is it exactly that's making this person so attractive to you? That often is a part of yourself that you've also denied or suppressed, right? Because this is also shadow projection in reverse, right? That's what idolatry is that you've now this person rejects, right? Like Joan, for example, she's extremely attracted to, she has this weird compulsive attraction to Broadway, right? And Broadway actors and actresses, but she doesn't know why she's so attracted to them, right? And only she never questions that until like she does the actual process of introspection. But it's this same sort of idea where you can find the trait in the person, and you can almost always kind of track back where you suppress that in yourself, and you'll begin to see, and this is why I think idolatry is unhealthy, is the reason why we do this, the reason why we have idols and people that we look up to, is that it's safer to view this part of ourselves from afar and not actually embody that part of ourselves, because it can be very dangerous, right? There's a level of responsibility that you have to take on
Yeah.
by going out into the playing field, by going out onto the field.
Right.
And with me, for example, something that I found, that I was so inspired by writers and by people who would speak on these podcasts and people who would express their ideas. And this was when I was 19. I'm 22 now. But when I was like 19, I was just so, I had I guess like a morbid attraction, right? I just couldn't stop watching these people, and I was so obsessed with them.
Right.
Like names like Sam Harris and Rupert Spira, etc. And I realized that it was because I had rejected that part of myself because of like, I had been bullied for it in school, right? Like it was always a bad thing to be the guy who, right? Like, and I mean, no, it's almost seen as like a very scary task to like post certain, and many people can recall this in high school, but to like post certain things of you like talking to the camera or trying to be like a social media influencer, like just get bullied for it.
Yeah, I was bullied for it.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, exactly. And so again, that is a perfect example of a collision moment, right? Your ego or your has kind of collided with the environment, namely bullying. And so I suppress that part of myself.
Right. Yeah.
But that suppressed part of myself actually was projected, right? Shadow projection, but this time it's just like shadow gold projection or idolatry, or was projected onto other people. So I would now find people who didn't suppress that part of themselves, who represented that part of themselves, and I would just cling to them because they represented that part of me that I so badly wanted to express, but I didn't know why. Right? That's important. Is that the shadow lives within the unconscious, and probably should have made this distinction earlier, but the ego and the persona. So again, are within the conscious. You're within. I mean, there's the conscious unconscious split.
Yeah.
They're within the conscious, meaning that you are aware of them. Right.
Yeah.
Right now you are aware of this. I'm aware of this mic. I'm aware of there's a cup right there. This chair. These are all things within conscious awareness.
Yeah.
There are also things that I'm also aware of my persona, right? Like the mask that I'm putting on here, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm also aware of how I'm acting in that way. It's
Yeah.
all within my awareness, right? If I think about it, I can think about the way that I'm acting right now. There are things that are completely unconscious that are going on, right? Within the unconscious, things that I'm not aware of. Within the unconscious lives the shadow. So when you say, like, importantly is you can't say like I know what my shadow looks like unless you've kind of done shadow work, but the big thing with the shadow is it's like your shadow. You can't like turn around and see it, right? It's always behind you and it's always been the unconscious and it's driving your conscious behavior. But again, you don't actually know what's going on, right? You don't know what's going on there. And so again, yeah, I was very attracted to these people who expressed this part of myself that I so badly wanted to, or that I had rejected in myself. And it was, and Robert Johnson talks about this in Owning Your Shadow, is the only way to actually deal with this is to eat your heroes in a way. You want to actually take those traits and eat them and actually try to embody those traits. And interestingly enough, is what you'll see is you'll actually lose this morbid fascination with these people. You'll still have respect for them, but you'll lose the urge to be them,
Yeah.
right? And that is a very good feeling. And that's a feeling that I only sort of began to feel as I began to post more and more and more. And when I began to lean into my creative side more and more, right? Because I initially was just posting fitness content,
Right.
my transformation content. That definitely alleviated some of the suffering to do with posting online, but definitely didn't alleviate all of it. There was still a part of myself where I was still rejecting my intellectual side, the part of myself that wanted to talk about intellectual things like this, right? I had always sort of suppressed that and rejected that and admired people who did express it. And I would always like look at these podcasts with Chris Williamson and I'm like, fuck, like it would just be so cool to just do something like that,
Yeah.
right? And only when I actually began to lean into that part of myself that I had rejected, right? And I was able to express it within school, within the context of a classroom, but I was not able to. I was still almost afraid of expressing that part of myself online, and only when I did that did I actually begin to lose my that idolatry began to disappear in a very cool way. And yeah, and it that was a very important moment for me and it was kind of me seeing live the shadow, right? And so this would be like essentially shadow integration. And so like bringing this back to Johnny is like a way that Johnny can integrate, let's say, his sadness, right? Is you want to integrate parts of your shadow, parts that you've suppressed into conscious awareness, right? So you want to actually bring them from, again, the shadow, and the way that it looks in a typical Jungian diagram is like this. There's an ego, which is kind of like a ball, and then there's a shadow, which is a ball, and there's a split between them. And you want to bring these traits from the shadow, like kind of into your conscious awareness.
Right. Yeah.
And so the way that Johnny would do this is, again, you would have to do it in a shadow. Importantly for anyone watching this is you don't want to jump into shadow work because it can be quite dangerous in the sense that you can re-traumatize yourself. Let's say Johnny just wants to, like he wants to go to his girlfriend. He realizes that he's been suppressing his authentic sadness. And he's like, I'm just gonna go cry. I'm gonna go cry, and I'm gonna go show her I'm this super like soft guy. And I mean, just the act of crying,
Yeah.
first of all, could just re-traumatize him. Like that could literally cause him to kind of.
Totally.
But secondly, is like let's say like his girlfriend just looks at him weird. She's like, okay, like, what are you doing? That can be extremely traumatic, right? So like a way that you would do it is called like, it would be like graduated exposure, which is something that I take like my mentees through, which is by exposing them slowly to, like in the case of Johnny is, let's say like you would be asking him just to like watch a movie, for example, and just feel the emotions that, watch a particularly emotional movie and feel the emotions that come and go. Don't necessarily cry, but just try to feel, just observe them without like like tensing up, and just try to feel them. That can be a very anxiety inducing task
Yeah, true.
for for Johnny. And then over time, he can actually begin to integrate these. He can do more graduated exposure, like it's a ladder almost, where he begins to uh, ex- try to display this part of himself that has been suppressed slowly but surely, in graduated ways, until he can comfortably say that I am actually a soft and caring person, and which would be which would stand in stark contrast to what he used to be, which was a very, again, very stoic, masculine figure, right? And that's a very healthy thing. Is now Johnny has access to the full spectrum of emotion there, right? And this goes back to like the core, the root of shadow work, which is to become whole, not perfect, but to become whole, right? So yeah, and so bring this all the way back to the example with your friends is, you will. It's interesting because yeah, like you'll go back to your friends and you'll have the impulse to, yeah, like shut down. And uh, there definitely is a, I mean, now that I think about it, there, yeah, like there, it's good that you notice that there's that part of you that begins to almost awaken in the subconscious, where you just want to like shut down, and you don't want to express this authentic part of yourself, which is to be the more expressive version of Sam who can be on podcasts, etc. And yeah, that very much, I mean, they could actually trigger that part of your subconscious or unconscious. And yeah, it can begin to manifest in your conscious behavior, which would cause you to actually act like that and shut down. Also, interesting enough is, I mean, the brain is just very good at coupling things. It likes to, just again, save energy. Like our brains just like to save energy when it comes to anything. So it could couple the idea of your friends with like being a sort of condensed version of yourself, or I don't know if condensed would be the right word, but non-expressive version of yourself, a lesser, for want of a better word, version of yourself, or less authentic, I guess, right? And uh, it, I think many people have experienced this sort of phenomenon where they'll go back home,
Yeah.
and like they don't even know why, but they just like kind of fall back into their old
Yeah,
behaviors.
for sure.
Yeah, and it's because the brain is quite good at doing at connecting um these environments with certain behaviors as well.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of things. But yeah, I took like a big sort of circle around the park there. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because I do think that's a good example of, um yeah, this part of your psyche kind of being awakened without you realizing it as well. But now, I mean, it's important, right? You're beginning to realize this, which is also like the beginning stages of shadow work, is to ask yourself, well, I mean, again, what things trigger me in other people? What compliments make me suspicious? Right? Like that's also a good like a question to ask. What environments, what did I learn was wrong or right? And then even like what environments are causing me to kind of like shut down, could be like good sort of in investigation questions as to like what the shadow looks like, which would be like shadow mapping, as they call it.
No, that's really good. It really made me think too. Was my mind kept going back to like high school when I think it was triggered by your math example. So I remember back when I was in math class in like grade 10, grade 11, I like the teacher always asked me if I wanted help, and I was like, no, I don't want any help. I never said yes to like help on my math problems once in my life. And then I noticed a similar pattern going to my relationships. I like in my last relationship, I was just like afraid of being vulnerable around my girlfriend. Like when something wasn't going well in my business, I was just like, "Oh yeah, things are fine. Don't worry about me. Like everything's fine." Yeah, and then I think, like, I've had that pattern play out so much in my life where it's like, I'm afraid of people seeing my weakness or, like, my vulnerable side, and I feel like that's, like, that belief or that state of mind is so common. So, what would be the first step for someone like me who does feel like that more unconsciously to break free from it or even just understand it better?
So would you say that you still find yourself um trying to be the person who is always okay? Like, and just like there's nothing's going on. Like, would you say that's something that you still do?
I'd say yeah, and it's hard for me to be emotionally vulnerable around friends.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, the first question that you should ask yourself there, I would say, is, and this can be difficult initially, right? Like, it can be initial to tap into the subconscious mind or the unconscious, where, um, I mean, there are many sort of deep and hidden corridors within the mind, um, that require effort and patience to finally find. And then within those corridors, there are different doors, and those doors, let's say, represent certain memories. And so the goal for you would be to first find, when did you learn that expressing that sort of emotion was bad, right? And there was definitely a point in your life, or several points in your life, where Sam learned, authentic Sam, because there was definitely a point in your life where you actually did express this part of yourself,
Yeah.
right? There is an authentic self there, authentic Sam, that used to be able to express this natural, um, vulnerable side of himself without issue. But again, there was also a moment where you learned, I can't do that. And the goal there would be, and a question that you can ask yourself, and I would recommend journaling about, because I never recommend, you'll never be able to think your way there just by thinking.
Yeah.
It will have to be through the act of journaling for many reasons, all of which are neurological. But um, yeah, to ask yourself, when did I learn that being vulnerable was bad, and just asking that question, and like certain follow up questions as well. Like, was there certain experiences that I've had where somebody acted that way and they were punished for it? Was there a way that was, or were they bullied for it? Was there a time where I was vulnerable and I was bullied for it, even in the in the smallest way, right? And then to just write down, just to see where your mind kind of goes, um, can lead to very interesting places, within, on paper and within the mind. So that would be like the first way that I would, go about that specifically, right? And you can also try to find, again, like, you can ask yourself, are there certain cases of men being vulnerable that trigger you? And if so, like, what are the exact dynamics that that man, eh, eh, or person? I mean, probably man, because in this case you're a male. Um, expressing vulnerability. What does that exactly look like? Again, like, for example, with Johnny, he gets very emotional when he sees doesn't know why. Again, doesn't remember why, or doesn't consciously know why this is happening. But whenever there's a boy and he's hugging his dad, right? He gets like super emotional, but doesn't even know why. He's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a hint, right? That's a hint. And by, I mean, getting even like a journal and just trying to, like, this is something that I used to do all the time, and I still do, is to just mark down moments during the day where you've been triggered, and to begin to note the commonalities between those instances. And over time, you'll begin to see, okay, like, there really is a pattern here, right? And from there, you can, uh, really, like, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people ask, like, how do you journal, Hammer? Is there like a specific way? It's a skill, is the first
Yeah.
thing. It's like, it takes,
Still.
like, it does take time to kind of tap into the subconscious mind, and to be able to just write, right? Because a lot of the time people start shadow work and like, fuck this, like, I just don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I'm not a creative person, right? Like, I can't do shadow work, I
Yeah.
can't write. Again, these deep rooted beliefs that we have of
Right. For
ourselves.
sure.
But over time you'll begin to see that you'll begin to enter this part of your mind a lot easier, and that can lead to very profound experiences. And um yeah, like even man, there's so much when it comes to shadow and Jungian psychology, but this idea of active imagination, for example, where you can actually dialogue with these parts of with these parts of yourselves, with these parts of yourself, on paper, and weirdly enough, like with chairs too. So, and with the chairs, I mean, this would be now leaning towards more modern interpretations of Jung, like internal family systems, so IFS, and other interpretations. But uh, what it is, an active imagination, is to, I mean, first of all, an example of this would be me being on paper, me writing on paper the conversation between me and, let's say, the inner child version of me, right? Like the younger version of Amor,
Yeah.
asking him questions and seeing how he responds. And so this is now where this term that I mentioned earlier, the autonomous psychological complexes that exist within us. The key is they're autonomous. They have their own beliefs, they have their own emotions, they have their own thoughts, and they really do. Like this is the part that it really seems like something weird is going on when you do this, where you'll speak to this part of yourself, let's say the inner child, and they will say things that you actually would never think of consciously, and it really does feel like you're speaking to somebody else. Interestingly enough, and I've seen this with several mentees of mine and just with myself, is that different parts of yourself, let's say like the saboteur, the person who's trying to protect you, but actually ends up sabotaging you,
Yeah.
right? All of us have this version, or the protector, or there's many manifestations. And there's many ways that the shadow can manifest. They can have different handwritings, which is it's really weird. Like,
The hell?
yeah.
Fucking
Yeah, it's really weird, and it really does seem like that there are these real entities that live within your psyche and mind. Yeah, and this happened with me several times, and it really feels like you're beginning to dialogue with a part of yourself, and only and like again, this happened several times where you won't really remember what they said because it's like you actually had a conversation with them. You'll remember what you said, but you won't remember what they said. You have to look back at the paper.
cool.
Yeah, or like another example of this would be chair work, which is like more gestalt therapy based, or also internal family systems, where you take two chairs. In one chair you are yourself, and in the other chair you, first of all, you want to visualize and try to figure out what this part of yourself looks like. Let's say it's like the let's say it's the saboteur, right? Like the person, the part of yourself that constantly seems to be sabotaging your success because they're trying to protect you,
Yeah.
for example, from um, from something. For example, a way that this kind of manifests with me is when I'm trying to do work, deep work, my saboteur is constantly trying to, and I feel the anxiety in my chest. Like that's where he manifests, is this really this tightness in my chest where I'm unable to do deep work because I'm constantly thinking of different things I need to be doing when it comes to my business, and just things I need to be doing in general. And I'll sometimes be so paralyzed that I cannot do the work. But from the saboteur's perspective, and when I dialogue with him, I quickly see that he's just trying to make sure that I'm okay, like that I'm actually doing everything that I need to be doing,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Or another way this could manifest, that used to manifest in my life, was the amount of hours of work that you spend rather than the actual efficient
Yeah.
hours. Yeah, right. Where
Sure.
like you'll just tell yourself, I need to work for 12 hours a day. It doesn't matter how good, like the KPI is wrong, right? They're tracking where they're just looking at raw hours rather than efficient hours. And again, I would have this part of myself where if I didn't work like 12 hours a day or 16 hours a day, I was like, I'm a failure, right? And it would be the saboteur speaking that,
For
like,
sure.
you are a failure. Um, and again, only when I began to dialogue with this part of myself did I realize his intentions. And it sounds so woo when I say it, but it really is really like, you really should try it. So, but, and by having this dialogue with them, you can begin to negotiate with them and make contracts with them, for example, and then you'll just begin to see this like release. And sometimes, interesting enough, is sometimes you'll see it like the release live while you're doing the work. Like you'll actually feel the tension drop. It's fucked. It literally feels like they were kind of like like grabbing your throat, or again, like for me, it's usually like, it feels like there's this metal plate in my chest.
Yeah.
And I felt it like just drop right when you begin to like negotiate and tell them, I understand that you've been trying to protect me, for example, and I understand your intention. I understand all of these things, but I like, you need to see how much you've been suffocating me, et cetera. You have this real conversation with them, which can last over an hour. And then you'll see the resolution or the dissolution of these, of these symptoms that really cause us to hurt and to suffer. Um, Yeah, and so what I was saying with like with the chair work is you can actually take the form. I've done this before. It's crazy, but you can take the form of the person that you want to speak to. So you want to know what they look like, and um, you want to give them a full appearance, what their posture is, and then so you sit in this chair
Yeah.
and you let's say you ask a question like, what is it that you're trying to help me with? You stand up, you go to the other chair, you take the position of the person, whether it's slouch down like this, or however they would, again, you want to visualize
Yeah.
it, and you begin to speak, and you begin to go from chair to chair, and you have full conversation, and it really does feel like there are two people having full conversation, and it can lead to very profound experiences where it just feels like you just spoke to another person. And again, it's like there are these real, again, autonomous psychological complexes that live within you, that have their own feelings and beliefs and behaviors that can only be seen when we allow them to be seen in certain ways. So yeah.
So, which other ways did your saboteur appear in your life? And like, what were some of the exact things that you noticed coming from your saboteur trying to self-sabotage you?
Yeah, I think like the first one that comes to mind was um my bulimic tendencies. So I yeah, uh, many people know here that like I used to. I mean, I still do. Like I like to bodybuild and I like to have a nice physique, and I sure still do. But there was a point when I was 19 where I was very obsessed with it, and again like I would say that I even look better than I used to. But despite being that obsessed, is the obsession was coming from, again, the saboteur. So like it was this, and I kind of call this part of myself within my Substack the dark side of Amor, DS.
Yeah.
And his sole goal was to make sure that I was like peak shredded, super like mm, just ripped, all these things, and and it didn't really matter the cost. And so ways that if I ate too much, for example, like I would just vomit.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck no, I'm not keeping this. And it wasn't really me, but it was that part of myself, which is like, you are not going to be holding an extra calorie, right? Or I would just suffer on the treadmill for the next day for like 4 hours, right? And like, yeah, like it was fucked. It was super bad. Or I would like starve myself for a day and do cardio. I've done like 48-hour fast where I just became borderline like I was like hypoglycemic at points and I could barely function. I got blood tests done, and because my health was not good, um, and I had ketones within my urine, which means like I was undergoing ketoacidosis, which is my body now was resorting to fat instead of, which is essentially something that you see in starved populations.
Right.
Yeah, like you'll see like ketones within urine. Yeah, that's what the saboteur, for example, did. Right? Uh, it didn't care about how I felt, or he didn't care about how I felt. It was more um yeah, these compulsive behaviors that would arise no matter how hard I tried to stop them. And yeah, and there was this fight between the dark side of myself and the other part of myself that I believe myself to be, which is like the fat ugly loser part of myself, which would also fight back. And eventually I realized that in that period, and from a kind of a different lens, a non-Jungian psychology lens, but that my true identity, who I really believed myself to be, was a fat, ugly loser. And I would always kind of fall back into becoming fat. Although, like, again, by regular standards, I wasn't fat, but I thought I was fat, right? Like, and I hated myself. I had a vehement hatred toward myself, and it was only by doing it was only by doing identity work and really learning about these different parts of myself and my identity as a thermostat that I began to realize I need to change who I believe myself to be on a fundamental level, to actually see change in the outer world, right? And this kind of goes back to what I talk about. But as long as I believed that I was the fat, ugly loser, um, no matter what progress I made in the outer world, no matter how shredded I got, I would
Right.
always kind of fall back to this set point. And that's where my identity thermostat was set when it came to my physical achievements. It would, no matter how hot my outer world would get, it would always just kind of come back down. Yeah, and so back to the saboteurs, like that's one way the saboteur would manifest is in the bulimic tendencies. Um, yeah, and with my business now, that's a like holds a significant portion of my life. It would definitely be like a very suffocating tightness in my chest that I begin to feel when I do work, because I feel like I'm not doing the work that I need to be doing. But even though I am doing the work that I need to be doing, I'm always thinking about little things that I haven't kind of um, done during the day. And again, I mean, you spoke of this too. It's like the open loops, right? Like, and how you want to close all these open loops. And as long as like my saboteur kind of was aware of open loops, it was like, you are not doing any work. Like there's no, and it was sad because I literally became paralyzed. Like I was just unable to do any work. And I mean, this is why obviously delegation is very important. You just don't want to be dealing with all those things, especially, and the greatest impediment to like creative work, which is my most important work as a creator, the greatest impediment to that is anxiety or stress, right? Like if you're anxious, you'll just never be able to access the creative mind or the creative brain. So, and that also was a massive hit to my mental health, because I get joy from creative work, from actually like thinking, and one of the probably one of the best periods of my life, if not the best, was writing the Substack, which was your identity is your thermostat. Um, that was one of the best periods of my life, because I'll never forget the moment of falling back into that creative world. And yeah, like my saboteur at that point was kind of attracted to different issues. My business hadn't been really rolling that much, right? Like it's crazy to think, but like prior to that, I didn't have a business that was doing as much money as it's doing right now.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that part of my psyche was just distracted with other things. So I was actually able to fall into this creative world and fall into my creative self. And yeah, like all of those analogies and the river of your identity being a river, um, that was all created in that time frame when it just when I didn't have that saboteur active, right? And so now I'm beginning to find that space again as I've been able to delegate tasks effectively. And yeah, I think it's very important and another thing that's helped me to, or allowed me to have breathing space, is to dialogue with a saboteur a lot. Like every fucking day right now, I'm just
I love to do that as well.
yeah, and just trying to find out what the intentions are, and trying to find out what their intentions are, what their goals are. And it's just insane, Sam. Like it's insane, but you will just see that it's so crazy. Like when you're doing work and you feel like the chest tightness coming, or however it manifests for you, you'll hear yourself be able to say like, it's okay, like we talked about this, and you'll just breathe. It's just insane. Like it's like you've actually just like kind of talked to this person. It's like, don't worry, like we're chill. But if you don't, that will always, like you'll always find it surfacing, right? No matter what. Um, this is also why I have an issue with like cognitive behavioral therapy,
Right.
um, that isn't done with identity work, where people will just focus on the actions, right? Like just the surface level,
Yeah.
because again, and that's what modern day society has kind of perpetuated, is this idea of that we must focus on the actions and the things that we do. And Nike says like, just do it. And all of it, like we're so action oriented, but we don't really like address the underlying, like where these actions are actually stemming from, like the soil in which these actions are actually growing from,
Yeah.
right? Because the actions are just like the plants, right?
Yeah.
Um, whereas the identity is the soil. And as long as we continue to try to plant new plants within rotten soil, they'll just die, right? And they'll wither away.
Good analogy.
Um, yeah, and so it really takes it's so important to go back to the foundation of where are these actions actually stemming from. Um, and you'll always find that it's from your identity, right? And your identity is the source code, right? It really is where everything, all the behaviors that you engage in, that you consciously engage in, arise from. And so cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, like just on what we were speaking about, if you if I tell you like, hey, like Sam, like I understand that you get really anxious when you work. I'm just going to here's this breathing technique that I learned from Huberman, and it's like the physiological side where like you just take 2 deep breaths in and you take a long breath out, and like your heart rate will slow down because it will. Like physiologically speaking, like that will actually cause your heart rate to slow down. However, like you're gonna have to keep doing that the whole fucking day.
It's
Right.
like getting rid of the symptom, not the root problem.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And so only when you actually do the identity work, right? Like when you figure out like why am I actually anxious?
Yeah.
Why? Rather than trying to again do these breathing techniques or these certain cognitive behavioral therapy techniques which are focused on the action level, which can work, but they work in conjunction with identity work. That's the important thing. That's how I work with them as well. It's like, yeah, I'll use CBT techniques in conjunction though with identity work. Because as long as I'm just looking at the symptoms and not the cause, I'm bound to regress. I'm bound to fall back, right? And so if you take like a really good example of this, also within that Substack was you take an obese person and you take a triathlon athlete. Let's just call them a triathlete. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and so you swap the minds between the triathlete and the obese person.
Yeah.
So essentially what you've done here is uh, you have now taken the inner world, right? Because let's just say the mind, the brain contains the inner world, and you swap them. So you swap the inner world
Yeah.
of the two. What do you see happen? The obese person now with the mind, the inner world of the triathlete begins to wake up at a certain time and go to certain and let's say go to like racing practice and begins to like actually look at the details of what they're eating, like the macros, etc. And over time you begin to see the obese person lose weight.
It would be so quick as well, too, like way faster than the average person.
Yeah, exactly. And then if the triathlete who now has the obese mind,
Yeah.
where the obesity the mind the inner world of the obese person, you begin to see that they don't care about the morning routines, and
Yeah.
they begin to eat whatever they want, and you see that this beautiful physique that they build begins to deteriorate over time. And again, what is this showing? It's like their actions are changing, right? But like, where are their actions coming from, right? Like the only thing that changed was the fact that their inner world changed.
Yeah.
And so like the outer world, their let's say in this case their physiques, like matched their inner world over time, right? Like 6 months later, 1 year later,
100%.
the obese person looks like a triathlete, and a triathlete looks like an obese person, right? And so this is just like another confirmation of how real this is. Or you just take again the lottery paradox, where so many lottery winners find themselves completely going completely broke, or interestingly enough, going back to the exact place where they originally started, which is also very interesting. So you'll an example of this that I saw, which was really funny, and I talk about it all the time, is this guy. I think he had like 130 something thousand dollars in his bank account.
Yeah.
Wins the lottery. I think it was like the lotto match, something $33 million or several $1,000,000. I think it was in the tens of millions.
Yeah.
And like 5 years later, he was back at 130 something thousand dollars. Right. And so like again, what is this showing? If you really think about it, his identity thermostat, right? The beliefs that he had about himself, the beliefs that he had about the world,
Yeah.
were that money is this hard to get, right? Like however hard he thinks it is to get. I make this amount of money. I have this amount of money in my bank account. Like it was all of these things were composed in a very, very meticulous way to make him sit at 130 something thousand dollars in your bank account, right? And this goes for us too.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money that we have in our bank accounts right now are just a manifest symptom of our inner worlds, right? That's it. And so even if even though he won, right, the Lotto Max, he went right back down. Like the outer world, he had this massive spike. His subconscious mind, as I said, sees it as almost a fire that's going off, and it wants to cool down the environment and the environment of his outer world. It
Yeah.
just cools it back down until he comes back down to what his identity is set at.
Yeah.
This is why you see so many people who or just like many homeless people who have won the lottery, just go back to being homeless. Right? Again, it's just the same idea. It's like their identities, their inner worlds, their thermostats are set at a certain temperature, and the outer world is just always will fall back to that temperature. And this just reminds me of something that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, which where he says that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits, right? And this is just very true. But I feel like a better way of putting it would be like you fall to the level of your identity,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because where are your habits coming from? It's like they're manifest symptoms. They're the behavioral outputs of something deeper, right? Which is your identity.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah, I kind of redirected us there, but yeah.
No, that was amazing. And so I love the direction you take that because that was also a big topic I really wanted to dive into. So I really want to talk about more the correlation between identity and business and like more importantly too like your journey with rewiring your identity to find success in your business because you're making what around 200K profit right now. Like congrats by the way. Fucking insane. Age 22, 200K a month profit. Fucking wild. But you got there after I believe you said about 9 or 10 months.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. I mean, it all does go back to. I mean, I began to realize. I mean, a massive sort of inflection point in my life was when I realized this whole concept of the inner and the outer world
Yeah.
meshing. That was like a whoa. A lot of people will listen to this and they'll be like, like, okay. But some people will be like, wait, like, this is very true. Like, my life right now is the direct result of my inner world. Like, it is the exact, like, it is it's so precise and painfully precise, and a lot of people will never kind of they refuse to acknowledge that because it's extremely painful to acknowledge that you are the sole arbiter of your life, and the only reason why you are where you are is you. And that was also a massive point for me, where like you have to be able to just take all the blame, and people will do anything to avoid that.
Right.
Well, and they because it's very painful, right? Like if you're working, let's say 9 to 5, and you just hate your life and your relationships are bad and you're overweight, it can be very difficult for you to acknowledge the fact that this is just your fault. Like it's just your fault, right? Like it's nobody else's fault. Regardless of how hard your circumstances are, um, there's somebody else who has it harder, is what I realize. And even still, like it just doesn't matter. It, it, it's it's still, and again, like this can just trigger a lot of people, but it's only when you can actually take all of that blame that you also gain agency, and now you can do something about it. Because the thing is people don't want to take the blame. However, by not taking the blame, they outsource agency and their ability to do anything about it. Because if I say like the reason why I'm poor, Sam, is because of you, it's like, well, what am I ever going to do about it? I'm now living a life based in contingency, where the only way that I can become rich, let's say, is if you do something about it, not me, because you now have the agency for my life, right? But as soon as I take back the agency, I'm like, no, it's my fault. Yes, it hurts like a bitch, but I can now do something about it. I've reclaimed my agency in that, right? So that was a massive moment too, where yeah, it was hard. I was like, yeah, like the reason why, I mean, I was overweight, I had crippling anxiety. and paranoia. Although that was like a whole other story with my derealization. But I didn't like myself. And I just wasn't doing as well as I wanted to be doing in life. My relationships weren't that great. This was all around like 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And then I realized like it's my fault. And that was like very difficult. Um, but that was also again the moment where I was finally able to do something about it. And so I began this journey of beginning to reconstruct my identity on a foundational level. Um, During this period, I was going through something called derealization, which, if nobody knows here, it's a whole other conversation. But I essentially lost contact with reality in a very horrifying way for 2 years. And
For 2 years.
yeah, I became like a shell of a human being. That's a whole thing. We can do a whole podcast on that. Um, yeah, and that kind of threw me into this whole world of nothingness and me realizing that there's a lot more, like we are constantly living on this precarious tightrope of sanity, and I fell off completely. I had thought I had lost my mind, and I didn't really think that I was ever going to come back. I'd contemplated suicide and all these things because it was just horrifying, but not like in a depressed way. It was more in a, um, it's only people who have derealized can kind of attest to this, but it's more of a, when you lose contact with reality, and well, I'll go into this a little bit, but when you lose contact with reality and you don't believe anything is real, is essentially the experience of derealization,
Yeah.
and you lose sense of self, although I can go into this for a long time, that can make the world entirely gray in a way that isn't necessarily depressing, but you come to the logical conclusion that this just isn't worth it. Like it's not even it's so weird. It's not like a depressed sort of like, man, like this is so awful, like I'm gonna end it all. It's more just like, this is it's very disturbing. And so I had been thrown into this, and that's kind of what I was in biomedical sciences for 2 years. I had left biomedical sciences, and then went to pursue biopsychology with a focus in neuroscience, and neuropsychology, because I just wanted to figure out what the fuck was going on. And it definitely gave more answers, but it didn't give all the answers that I wanted. So then I decided to do a dual major in philosophy, which is now what I'm doing right
Yeah.
now. So like the biopsychology with neuroscience and philosophy, or just like neuropsychology and philosophy. And with philosophy, that's where I began to realize that my confusion and my lostness had a lineage. And that's where I was like, okay, like this is where things began to make sense.
Right.
So that's why philosophy is so important to me. And why I hold on to it very, very tightly. But yeah, so anyway, so there was this entire period of my life where things weren't going the way that I wanted them to go. And I began to realize that through identity work, and I began to study also Eastern philosophy as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like Buddhism and Taoism,
Right.
um, that the outer world began to just match my inner world, right? Like I began to change the way that I related to myself, on a like existential level and on a like neurological level, and things began to change. The outer world uh, began to really match my inner world, and in ways that was just very weird. Like I just began to now just have like a crazy physique all the time, rather than just some of the time. Right, my relationships began to improve. I began to find like true inner peace, with myself. All these things, and this was all the result of me changing my identity, um, or just the way that I related to myself. And then, yeah, and after I had achieved all of these things, like on the intellectual level of things, and not that I've achieved that much, but
Done very well.
thanks, bro. And then on the physical end of things, I was like, business was no different, right? Like, and that was the cool part, is when I was like, okay, I want to make money now. It's just about like just doing the work on an identity level, becoming the person, right? And this goes back to what Jim Rohn says: is the major outcome of life is not what you get, it's what you become, or who you become in the process of getting that thing of what you get. It's who you become, right? And so the question that you have to ask yourself, when asking what you want in life, is not what you want. It's who do I have to become so that these things that I want are a natural byproduct of the person I've become. right? Like the reason why I have like the physique that I have, or you have the physique that you have, is not because you just want a good physique. It's because you've just become a person who just values the gym on an identity level, right? Who values his health. And your physique is just a natural byproduct of that, right? The reason why you're making money is not because you just want money. Again, like you realize the universe doesn't really give a fuck about what you want. It just cares about who you are. And the reason why you have those things is because on an identity level, you believe yourself to make a certain amount of money, and that you for example have inherited the belief that money isn't hard to obtain, right? And that's why you've actually been able to achieve that. So your behaviors that stem from that identity will make you achieve those things. And so this is just the case in business. It's like it's no different. It's so crazy. Like once you get this, you just realize that you can do whatever the fuck you want, and your horizons truly become limitless. Like that's a very cool feeling, because even now, like with how much I've achieved, and like next month, it's crazy. Like I'm looking through like $500,000 or even more, and it's
Excited for you.
thank you. And it's it's weird because there's not like a doubt in my mind about it. There's no like is this, it's just you learn that the outer and the inner world just match. They just do. No matter what, they just do. And so when you just continue to push the limits of your inner world, you'll see that the outer world matches, right? And so I have very big goals now. My goals only continue to grow. But it's a cool feeling where you just no longer doubt whether they'll come to fruition or not. You just know they'll come. So in the case of business, is I needed to just give myself a self audit of sorts, where I had to ask myself, who did I actually have to become so that having like several six-figure per month business would just be a natural byproduct of that. Not what do I want. If I ask myself, yeah, like I want $1 million per month, like okay, dope.
We all do.
Yeah, like all of us do, right? It's like, who do I have to become, right? And so this is what like the future self narrative is, which is something that I talk about, and something that's very useful to engage with, is to create like a first person narrative of the person that you are in the future, written as if you are that person. Um, like a good example of this would be like just describing the day in the life of that person and who you've become in extreme detail and visceral detail, um, using like all sensory modalities and how you feel during the day and what you do when you wake up, when you go to sleep, what your day actually looks like. Again, with extreme detail.
Yeah.
And by rehearsing this part of this version of yourself over and over every single, let's say every morning and night, especially right when you wake up and right when you go to sleep, because the subconscious mind seems to be more open per se, or your brain is more neuroplastic, in other words. You can truly rewire neural pathways to, in essence, create a neural template um, of this person that you want to become. And when you have this template, you can now begin to really move towards that version of yourself and away from the old version of yourself. And you'll see that you'll begin to actually behave in the way that person would behave. Which can just, again, that's a very cool experience too, is you'll just see retrospectively after making a certain action that it was actually aligned with the person that you wanted to become.
Right.
So, and that's a good sign that something is going on subconsciously, right? Because now, as we've talked about, is your conscious behaviors are just being driven by your subconscious mind. So let's say like you have the regular habit of going on your phone, opening it, and going to Instagram.
Yeah.
And one time, let's say you suddenly are like you're rehearsing your future self narrative day and night, and then one day you open your phone and you don't check Instagram, and you don't really notice until after, and you're like, wait, I didn't check Instagram, and you're like, oh shit, like something is going on subconsciously.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. It's like you just want to become a person. And the thing is like you haven't actually focused on, you haven't had like there was no sort of behavioral intervention there where you're like, I'm going to focus on the behaviors. I'm going to figure out like a way to slow down my action when I touch my phone, so that like by the time that I see the Instagram app, I'm not going to tap on it. Like if you keep doing that, it's the same thing as what we were talking about with the anxiety and the breathing technique, is you're just eventually going to figure out ways to go back on Instagram.
Totally.
Whereas if you actually like reconstruct the way that you relate to yourself and on an identity level, you you won't have that inclination anymore. But on a much, much more profound level, like you've actually changed. Um, and that's where real changes begin to manifest in the outer world, right? Because now that you're not doing that, you're probably doing other things that are conducive to your growth, right? And help you and align you in the way that you want to go. And then you just begin to see changes. And so again, with any endeavor that it is, whether it's business or whatever it is I tell people this all the time. It doesn't matter what it is. Like you can make money through like there's just so many ways to make money and all of them work. Like anyone who says, and I think like you should always be wary of the person who's like, oh, trading is bullshit, or dropshipping is bullshit,
For
or
sure.
info is bullshit,
Yeah.
or car detailing is bullshit. Those people like have just are the paradigmatic example of people who are just so um who haven't really seen through the surface of the inner world, right? They just see the actions and they and it's crazy because like I truly believe that if I wanted to, let's say like go do trading,
Yeah.
right? I could just be successful in it.
Totally.
You know, like it's just a matter of actually just believing that, right? Like on an identity level that you are that person, that you can be in that you can do whatever it is that you set out to do. But again, on a not that you want to do this thing, that you actually like are becoming this person where that thing is again just a natural byproduct. You can just do whatever you want, right? And so now like with my businesses, I had achieved all these things, like I said, and business was just was no different where I said, okay, I have to become a person where what behaviors does this person naturally engage in, right? So like that is, for example, writing all the time and actually enjoying doing the work. Not and this is also very important is you don't want to be disciplining yourself. I feel and this is something that I guess is like a hot take, but I think the notion of discipline is extremely overhyped and um what's a good way to put it? It's people like mentally masturbate to the idea of discipline, and I think that it's just so wrong because it indicates that you don't want to do the thing, which means that there's probably something going on an identity level where it's like, why don't you want to do it? Like for me and for you as well, right? And any other person, an entrepreneur is you are naturally pulled. You should be naturally pulled towards the things that you assign to you, right? And
Yeah.
that's the big difference with identity is as soon as you're being pulled towards the things,
Yeah.
like as soon as it hurts not to do the things, that's when you know that you've done something right, right? Like rather than having to discipline yourself, like, oh fuck, I need to write today,
Yeah.
right? I need to read today. It's like if that was the case, I would like be so like 6 feet underground, right? Like it's it all came down to again, you want to be you don't want there to be a barrier between you and the thing, for you to always be like having to like jump over, right? Like the person who bodybuilds and who's an insane bodybuilder doesn't again like they don't even if they say it like it's just bullshit, but they're not disciplined in that way. They have just built an identity where they just want to work out, right? Like Sebum, for example, isn't going to the gym and like, oh fuck, I need to work out. Maybe like on a cut, right? Like when it gets super extreme, sure. There's differences there. Even still though, I would still argue that he's pulled towards working out. But you, imagine if like every single day he had to say that to himself, oh my God, like no, that's not how it and it's in the same way, people who aren't necessarily successful, well, let's say when it comes to business, are still pulled towards other things. Like they are pulled towards going on their phone or playing video games, whatever it is. And they enjoy doing it because their identities are like coding for that, right? Like they're actually just pulled towards that. You can do the same thing. You can actually make the things that you don't think are enjoyable, right? You can actually change that. And that's when you see people make massive leaps and strides, right? And I feel and I mean, this is like something that you often just see with a lot of people who have their identities very aligned, where you're just like, holy shit, how is that person making so much progress so fast?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that person, like, I swear, like 3 months ago, they were like, whatever. And then now and it's because like they're being pulled towards their goals. They're not having to fight every single day. Right. And so that is also, um, something that I feel that people just again overlook is like they're like, no, like like I hate my work, but I'm disciplined. It's like, bro, like there's nothing, there's nothing. I just I don't know if there's anything to be proud of there. It's like, okay, like you hate your work. It's like so you're just gonna hate your work for the rest of your life.
Hate your life.
Yeah, so and your work is your life. So exactly, so you hate your life. So, um, eh, yeah, I feel like there's a massive disconnect there, and people you shouldn't want to be disciplined. Um, if I ever have to discipline myself to do something, right? Like, and again, it's like almost like masochistic, where it's like, why are you punishing yourself and getting pleasure out of it? It's like, yeah, right? It's like, yeah, it's an odd notion to me. And if I ever do have to discipline myself, I always have to ask myself, like, what's going on here?
That's so true. That's so true. Like digging into that feeling, like why don't I want to do that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So this really reminds me of something Chris said at that show that we were both at. So he was saying, like, you judge the quality of your life based off how excited you feel to wake up in the morning and like how excited you feel getting out of bed. So how does somebody find that thing that can just get them always fired up and like that they don't even need to discipline themselves for?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad that we now mentioned the story of Joan.
Yeah.
But so Joan, for example, has suppressed her expressive side, her side that likes to dance and to be theatrical and
Love Joan.
yeah, love Joan. But sadly, Joan hates this part of herself. She she hates the people who go on dance stages, and she, interestingly enough, too, in her language, she'll have these Freudian slips
Right.
where I just think of this one time. She'll have these slips where she'll be like, "Why is this person?" Or she'll say things like let's say there's a very expressive person
Yeah.
within her work.
Yeah.
She she has a weird resentment towards them, right?
Right.
And she doesn't really know how to uh I mean, her language, the way that she uses her language in that case is she'll say something like, this is very interesting actually. Is she'll say like, we don't need to make a show out of this, right? Like the word show, or no need to be so performative, or again performance. These certain words that she uses that are arising are indicators of her shadow as well. Back to her shadow. It's like she's using words like theatrical. Like, why are you being like, why is she making such a performance out of it? Or again, you don't need to make a show out of it. That is an indicator as to what her shadow looks like, right? So it's very interesting how even people's language and like the way they reject certain things in other people, or in themselves, and project that onto other people. Their language can also be indicators as to what they've suppressed. Anyways, Joan has suppressed this part of herself that wants to be expressive, theatrical, can't find the thing, right? And now she, as Jung would term it, is dealing with the unlived life, right? And she's trying to find the life that will actually bring her happiness and joy. And her depression is just a symptom, uh, a symptom of her psyche rejecting her circumstances, right? And that's often what depression is like. If you are depressed, or if you are like severely anxious, that is very important. Like that's not something to necessarily just numb away. You should ask yourself, like, why am I depressed right now? Like a lot of people will, and this goes into another conversation with the people just always resorting to medication and drugs. But a lot of the time prior to actually resorting to those interventions, pharmaceutical interventions, one should ask themselves, is there something that my psyche is screaming at, or screaming at me for, right? And in the case of Joan, her psyche is screaming at her to actually like to go express herself in a theatrical way. And like a way that she could do that, for example, is to like just begin like, and again, this thing with graduated exposure is uh in the case, for example, within a car, she would begin to like sing within a car,
Mm.
right? That would be like the first way that she would expose herself to, or integration specifically, or integrate this part of her shadow. And then another like small example of like would be like dancing in her room alone, right, to music. And then slowly but surely increase like the difficulty, I guess. So, like the next thing would be like going to a choir where she's not the only person singing. So like her psyche doesn't freak out, her saboteur or whatever part of her psyche doesn't freak out when, let's say, she makes a mistake. There's not the stakes aren't that high because she's a part of a choir, she's not singing alone, etc. So she would build up. And so back to what you were saying is you want to find out. And so even before that though, by doing this, Joan will eventually find happiness in her life, is the big thing. She will find happiness because she has now found the thing that she has suppressed and she's actually able to pursue now, right? And that she's rejected her whole entire life. And that can be very hard as well. There's a grieving process to shadow work as well, where one must grieve everything that they've lost. And if in the case that somebody, and I think this is a very good segue into like finding what that thing
Yeah.
is like you need to ask yourself, what is it that genuinely gives me like a weird spark? Right? Like when does time really seem to just not feel real, right? Um, and again, it can be difficult because sometimes we might have suppressed that thing in ourselves. And if we had, then again, it takes work to find out again, what is it in other people that trigger me, doing all these audit questions, trying to find out what you've maybe suppressed. That thing might be the thing that you have a real passion towards. But again, a lot of people just, I think it's very sad, right? Like a lot of people in the workforce who are doing 9 to 5s have these really like, have these inherent like inclinations toward certain things and projects that they're just so good at, but they just suppress and reject because like there's no way I could be good at that. Or and I think that's you are destined to live a life of suffering if you don't find the thing that your authentic kid self would want you to do,
Right.
right? And so like I'm very privileged and lucky to be able to say like I've always just had a weird thing for just like learning and being in school and writing and reading. Um and I've been able to just make a job out of that. Like my job now is just to like read and implement things that I read, and I go to school. I still go to school, right? Like despite making the amount of money that I make, to learn and then to implement those things that I learn into what I teach. And even if I don't teach them, right? Like there's still a part of me that will always want to just be in a classroom, right? Like I'm not going to just stop going into uh, I'm not going to stop going into a classroom if I found all the things I need to teach to other people. I'm still going to include that as a part of my life because that's very important for my like psychological health. And it's always important for you to find those things that really bring out the best in you. And yeah, the things that you just have a natural talent for is the way that I would describe it. And everyone here watching this knows that there's something like that for them. Whether it's something that they used to be good at as a child, or something that they're still very good at and they have a weird obsession towards, like that little thing that they like to do on the side. That's the thing, in my opinion. And it's like I don't know, I would argue that you can truly find ways to integrate that thing into a business model somehow, right? Like whatever it is. Some people are just like good at solving problems and they really like solving problems. Like, bro, like because you can do a lot of things with that to make a lot of money, right? You don't need to. And those people, I mean, this is why also, again, people just find themselves so depressed in the 9 to 5 life is because they've now just suppressed that part of themselves. They've rejected that part of themselves that that want to that wants to be um I mean they've disowned that authentic part of themselves that inclines towards certain things, right? And just as I put it, yeah, and that can be very difficult. So I would say, just to answer that question more directly, is to find the thing that that really seems to ignite a spark,
Yeah.
and then find ways to implement that into, I mean, ideally into just your working life, right? And I just again would argue that there are ways to often to do that, and that's how you get this feeling of waking up and and just being like, holy fuck, like I'm so excited for the day, right? Like that's such a good feeling to have. Like it's such a good feeling to have. Um, and it's a feeling that I genuinely hope everyone can feel, right? It's like wake up and just be so excited because most people have lost that. Most people are, and again, it's just like the tragedy of modern day society, I guess, right?
100%. And something you were touching on before that was making me really curious was you were talking about how you created this exact future self narrative for the type of person you're going to be when you're making a certain amount of money and when you're successful in business. I'm so curious. Who exactly was that person? Like, what exactly did you write down that future self narrative in that day in the life?
Cool. Yeah. So, I have several. I
Yeah,
have several,
love to hear.
and I mean, the interesting thing about future self narratives is that you can pace them differently. So you can write a future self narrative, that describes the day in the life of the person that you want to become in 6 months, the the day in the life of the person you want to become in a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah,
I have like several. And one of the most important things I usually write is the feeling of enjoying, uh, the feeling of acquiring knowledge, like knowledge acquisition, and enjoying it and what it feels like. And I'll just describe that process. Um, where, yeah, like just I think an example that I can think of is I love, or the feeling of reading a book and the feeling that I get in my chest and in my face and in my body. And I'll describe that feeling, for example, like the electricity that moves from my chest to my body. And you really want to just be super specific in how you're describing it, just weirdly specific, with a lot of somatic detail. And for example, like one of those things would be like acquiring knowledge. And so like when I'm reading that every single day, when I'm actually going and reading and acquiring knowledge, I do feel that sort of those sort of associated sensations, right? And that goes for everything. So whether it's a person, if you are a resilient person or a person that is able to witness thoughts arise and pass away, right? Like what does it feel like? I notice anxiety rise in my chest. I also notice it fall away. um I notice the heat in my face. I notice the weight in my chest. And you want to be, again, describing this in just very specific detail, and then what it feels like when it arises, what you do, right? When it arises, just simply, and in my case, it would be simply to observe it from a more Buddhist perspective,
yeah.
and to let it pass, right? And to notice that like you are just this open, empty space in which everything is arising. And there was something that I wanted to uh say on that. I forget, but yeah. And so, uh, oh yes, and so by doing this, the important thing is that again, you're creating a neural template for the person that you want to become.
Interesting.
And so people who, if you take two groups of people, right, and it's just a very interesting thing, is
Yeah.
you take a piano player and you tell them to think about playing the piano. You take another piano player and you just get them to play the piano.
Yeah.
What do you actually see? The the piano player, who is thinking about it, who's just visualizing playing the piano, actually visualizing and embodying that experience, you will see the same part of their brain activate, the motor cortex, as if they were playing the piano. It's fucked. Like it looks the exact same. Like if you tell them to like think of the exact song and then they actually go and play it, the 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 brain looks almost identical. Like it's so crazy. Like your brain is very much rehearsing the thing
Yeah.
live, even when you're visualizing it. This is why athletes visualize a race. This is why gymnasts visualize doing certain, um, ma- what is it? Like tricks, for
Yeah.
example. I was going to call it tricks, but yeah.
Yeah, they're called tracks.
Okay, yeah. Well, gymnast tricks. Yeah, we'll just call them tricks. I'm sorry, Danny Gymnast. That's definitely not what they're called. Um, But it's very important. Like even the first time that I got my first handstand, right? I had to
Yeah.
visualize it, and only after I had visualized it did I actually able to
Right.
do handstand. In the same way, when you are reading the future self narrative and you are embodying that experience, you are also activating the same neural pathways that are used for that thing. So like if you are reading, let's say, the urge, I feel the urge to go on my phone, and again, you're describing it in detail. You feel it in your right arm, you're feeling it pulsing up to your head, and you feel the urge. if you're reading that every day and you're also reading how you respond to it,
Yeah.
right? Like the observation side of it, every single day, you're also rehearsing the same neural pathways for that behavior. So when it actually happens, right? When it happens that you do have the impulse to reach for your phone, you have now rehearsed this so much, you've embodied it so much that you're able to observe it and you won't actually reach for your phone. And you really have, I mean, this is just a manifest symptom of neuroplasticity in action, right? Where you have changed the neural pathways associated with a certain behavior experience, and you no longer, or you find yourself acting in that way that you've described so viscerally. And this is why the future self narrative is so important. Another reason why the future self narrative is so important, uh, and I think this is a novel insight. So this is the first time I think I'm going to say it on YouTube, but so the same parts of our brain that are used to recall the past are also the same parts of our brain that are used to envision the future. Okay, so namely the default mode network, posterior cingulate cortex, hippocampus, a few other areas. And so this is you got to stay with me here, but it's really cool. So when you begin to write, so again, these parts of your brain are the same that are used to think of, recall your past, are the same ones that envision your future.
Yeah.
When you begin to write a future self narrative and you actually begin to change the way that you view your future because you are beginning to rehearse as part of um, this future version of yourself,
Yeah.
you are also, because it's the same parts of the brain, as far as I'm aware, but I'm pretty sure it's correct because it's something that I've experienced subjectively as well, is the way that you view your past, your past begins to change as well. And because again, it's the same parts of the brain. And so you will begin to completely reinterpret memories
Really?
in a way that aligns with this new identity that you've built. It's insane. And like, I used to think that I was this loser in high school, and if you were to ask me like, why did you do this? It was because I was a loser. I was fat, I was ugly, whatever. Now, and I just remember doing this is when I was doing the future self narratives, the way that I would respond to those questions just began to change. Where, oh no, I wasn't a loser. Like, I was just learning. It's weird, but again, it was subconscious. Like, I just didn't realize that my narrative of the past was changing. I began to block out certain memories or just reinterpret certain memories. Importantly, too, this is extremely important, is memories are not stored like files on a hard drive within the brain.
Okay.
So when you actually recall a memory, you are actually like reconstructing the memory based off of patterns that you remember. This is just true neurologically. There's no such thing as storing a memory like it's not this file that you click on and open up and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. No. It's you are just, there are patterns that are associated with that memory and you reconstruct them and then they pretty much like deconstruct. What does this mean? Memories are malleable. So you can actually change the way that you remember things. And this is just very true. Like, if you lie to yourself about a certain thing enough times, you will you you'll begin to believe that that thing actually happened. This is just very true. This is also why eyewitness testimonial is very unreliable, because if you ask somebody, oh yeah, I mean, this is just like a very like a common example, but people, let's say like that witnessed a murder.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people who are asked them will intentionally put like parts that aren't real into the testimony when asked them. So they'll be like, so did you see a man walking across the street and he was wearing a yellow shirt? And it's like, this has never happened. And the person will be like, yes, I do remember that, but it just never happened, right? So like, again, like, memories are very can be affected, and they're very delicate. And so again, so when you are beginning to write your future self narrative and rethink the way that you see the future, you are also changing the way that you now are viewing your past, because it's the same parts of the
So
brain.
interesting.
Yeah. And when you do that, right, when you change the way that you view your past, the way that you view your future also changes. Why? Because again, if you think, because the way that we believe ourselves, and back to what we were saying, is our identities are like the collection of beliefs that we have about ourselves, right? And many of those come from our past. And so if I begin to change the way that I view my past, right? I will naturally or inherently by doing that, my capabilities that the the things that I think I'm capable of now, of doing now,
Right.
that are based off of my conception of my past, right? If they will begin to change, given that I begin to view my past differently, right? This is also why it's very important to, if you can just tell someone to reinterpret their past in a certain way, they'll just think of themselves differently. They're like, oh, I can do that. You know, like, or I am more capable of doing this. But just by telling them, like, do you think that you're maybe like seeing this, that you're viewing this wrong here? Like, do you see how that's not necessarily like, and they'll be like, oh, yes, that's right. And by doing that, you can change the way they view themselves now, what their capabilities are, and that will also change the way they view their futures. Um, they view their future, and so again, it's this really cool loop that you see where change the way that you view your
Yep.
future, and then you will inherently change the way that you view your past because it's the same parts of the brain that are being activated. Which is also why the future self narrative is very important, and you'll see this live, right? Like when you begin to rehearse this future version of yourself, you'll just you'll I mean, you'll filter out certain memories just naturally because the memories that don't cohere with your self-concept. Again, what does your brain care about? It does not care about truth. It doesn't really care about what happened. It cares about coherence, right? So if there are memories that are contradictory to that self-concept that you've built for yourself, your brain will just filter them out, right? Or it will just reconstruct them in a way that does fit with your identity, right? That's why it's also very dangerous that where if you believe that you are a loser, you will only remember times where you were a loser, right? Or you will try to reinterpret memories in such a way where they confirm the belief that you are a loser. Yeah, but this goes the other way as well, right? So by changing your identity, not only do you change the way that you view the future, um, but yeah, your entire interpretation of your past and yourself as a whole just begins to change.
So, what do you think will be the first step for me or somebody watching this to create a future self narrative?
Yeah, so I would first do like a sort of audit
All
where
right. Okay.
what are the what is the person I've become now? Like what are the behaviors that I'm engaging with now? Who have I become? What do I value? What are my reasons as to what I'm doing everything? And like how are the manifest outcomes of my life directly associated to my identity and who I believe myself to be? And so just like find those connections. Um, and then after doing that, um, you can begin to now construct this future version of yourself where how does this person act on a just on a on I mean again, see even there like I made a mistake. Not how does this person act? How does this person act as a result of who they are? So who has this person become, right? That's what we want to ask is who do I want to become, right? What do not what do I want, right? You don't in a future self narrative. I don't think it's necessarily useful. Although I mean, these things can be useful in other circumstances to say like, oh, like I have a Ferrari and I have this and I have that. Those are wants, outcomes,
Yeah,
and not actually like processes or just they don't. Everyone wants a Ferrari, right? But
for sure. Yeah.
you want it to be you want the Ferrari to just be a natural, again, just symptom or byproduct of the person that you've become. So by asking yourself again who you are now and then contrasting that to the person that you want to become, and just and seeing what sort and just how they engage in their daily life again as a result of the person that they become though, right? Like when you say that in the future self narrative that you have, let's say, a respectable physique, it's a why though. Well, say, yeah, why do I have a respectable physique? It's like because I value health and because X, Y, Z, right? Like who, again, you're going back to identity level and on a more existential level, who you believe yourself to be. And then after doing that, then you can begin to integrate um, more like neuro-linguistic language, for example, um, where you talk about like the actual somatosensory experience of being this person. So this is now where you name like the feeling that you get while doing certain activities in your chest, and you want to name exactly what it feels like, the warmth that you feel in certain parts of your body. And by doing all of those things, and you can begin to create like a strong, coherent vision of who you want to become. And then you want to rehearse that. So the way that I go about it usually is first thing in the morning, like right when I wake up. Um, you want it to be like literally first thing when your eyes open, when you're almost in this like a weird liminal space when you wake up, like when you're half dreaming almost. The the subconscious mind is particularly susceptible to change, or just and I mean your brain is just more neuroplastic. And so this is when you want to be reading the future self narrative.
Yeah, right.
Importantly, though, you want to be embodying it as well. So really like taking the posture, like sitting in a certain posture and really trying to almost like half visualize it, right? Because again, you're just incurring more neuroplasticity by doing this thing, or by reading it in an embodied
Yeah,
fashion.
yeah,
And same thing at night, right? Like right before you go to sleep. Um, and this just makes intuitive sense as well. Is if I'm doing this right when I go to sleep, I mean, dreams specifically are a paradigmatic example of, or a paradigmatic illustration of what the subconscious mind looks like, right? So like your prefrontal cortex begins to kind of like shut off, and your subconscious mind begins to just awaken within dreams. This is why Carl Jung just always was analyzing dreams, and a whole part of his practice was just like dream analysis.
yeah,
And so again, if I'm reading this future version of myself right before I go to sleep, chances are my subconscious mind, again, my dreams are going to be affected somehow, probably. Right? It just makes sense. But this is just true also neurologically, is your brain is also just more, um, your subconscious mind is more susceptible to change, and your brain, again, is more, I guess, neuroplastic, in the state right before you go to sleep. So those are the two times to I feel are very important. And I just like to carry my future self narrative around with me all the time. Like I have it in my bag.
yeah.
It's a very good grounding technique where, like, if you do find yourself slipping, you just go back and read who this person is that you're wanting to become. Importantly, though, you don't want to say I want to have or I want to become. It's just I am,
I am.
right? Because again, by introducing this this gap between you and the person you want to become, um, you 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 do create a permanent gap in a
Yeah,
way, right? Like you're just going to be in this constant state of becoming rather than just being, right? And so you want to be in a state of being this person where you will see like the behaviors naturally flow. So, um, yeah, I'm trying to, yeah, and also importantly is, it's important to know that like identity change and change when it comes to doing these sorts of practices like shadow work and future self narratives is that they operate on neurological time, not psychological time. So it
okay.
takes time for your brain to rewire, right? Like neuroplasticity is not a day where you read the future self narrative and you're just chilling, right? It takes time for your brain to rewire. And it's very important to continue doing these sorts of these practices, and other practices as well, when it comes to identity, consistently,
Yeah.
so that you have like, so again, that, and with time you'll begin to see these changes. And then again, once you see these changes on an identity level, you'll begin to see changes like in the outer world, right?
Right. So what's the difference between neurological and psychological time?
Yeah. So with psychological time, I mean, yeah, the reason I guess I didn't clarify well enough there. So like a lot of people think that when they read, I mean, like psychologically, when you're reading the future self narrative,
Yeah.
you may believe that you are just going to be this, you are going to immediately transform into this person, ignoring the actual material processes that are going on underneath, which are the neurological processes. Um, and those are very important to take into account because again, that is the the thing that actually needs to change on identity level.
Yeah.
Um, or it's the thing that needs to change for identity change to occur, right? Like when you actually change on identity level, you will see, the brain, your brain just looks remarkably different, right, than how it used to look. Literally looks different because the ways that the neurons have rewired essentially, are very, very different from the ways they used to be, right? That's
Yeah.
why identity change is you take a person who's depressed, um, and a person who's no longer depressed, same person, and if you take a look at their brain, the two brains, they look very different, right? And so that's the like the neurological time change. It's like you need to wait for the brain to actually change, right? It can't just be fully psychological, where I mean, many people will think like, I mean, it doesn't make sense to say like psychological change tracks with neurological change, which is true, but there's also like an inclination for people to just think psychologically that they're just going to read something and they're just going to see change right away, or do shadow work and they're going to see change right away. Rather, it actually does take time, right? It takes time on a material level.
What do you think's a limiting belief that you're still working through, or an area of your life where you can feel that your identity is still holding you back?
It's weird because I think by with all the work that I've done, I, I don't know, like it's weird. Like I don't really, I feel like I have very little limiting beliefs now. Um, because I've realized that limiting beliefs are so insidious
Yeah.
in the ways that they can affect your life. And I'm very quick to notice any limiting beliefs I have. Um, that's a good question though. Maybe, I mean, perhaps one, and I haven't thought about this, but is I have like, so I've had, ever since my derealization, I've had anxiety, chronic anxiety. And I guess there is a sort of belief that the anxiety might just stick forever, this chronic anxiety that I have, because of all of the sort of information that I've come to understand. And yeah, maybe there's a definitely there might be a belief there where I mean, I appreciate you for I guess making like surfacing this, but something that I might need to investigate too, where yeah, maybe I believe that my identity or anxiety is a part of my identity, where and I actually talk about this a lot, where like one shouldn't say that they are anxious, but rather that they are feeling anxious, right? Because by saying I am, you are you are identifying with something that is not you. And I feel that I do that with anxiety sometimes, where I'll be like, I'm so anxious, whereas I don't, where I should be saying, I feel anxious, which is there's a big difference there, right? Like if it's not like I am like even when you're stressed with your business, for example, you shouldn't say I am stressed. It's like I feel stressed. It's because you are not anything in that way, right? And this goes back to like Buddhism, where you shouldn't be identifying with these thoughts, because again, like the identification with thought, can very much create a lot of suffering, and the attachment with thought and just attachment with certain things as well is what Buddhism teaches, creates a lot of suffering. So yeah, there might be a sort of undercurrent of thought there that might not be um, being investigated when it comes to my anxiety, and because it's just never kind of went like it's always there. I've been able to manage it very well though, to the point where now it just doesn't affect me. And it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be because of the identity work that I've been doing. However, there is still, there is definitely still is there. And sometimes it can surface more if I'm like more stressed. Um, yeah, I can find myself to be more anxious, to feel more anxious. um, yeah, so I think maybe that would be a sort of belief that I have, is that maybe like my anxiety might stay, which I probably shouldn't have. And something that I've actually been working through. Now that you say it, like I do definitely talk about my anxiety in all of my journaling and writing. As for more uh far-reaching limiting beliefs, I don't feel like I don't know. I feel like I've kind of eliminated them. I just and it's a very cool feeling where I just don't think there's anything that I cannot do. Literally, like if I just want to do something, I'll do it. And it's just a matter of time until I do it. Right? Like I want to become an author and I want to become a writer. And I want to do things that are a lot bigger than what I'm doing right now. And I have no doubt that I will do them because of, again, this realization that like the outer world and the inner world match, right? Even when I made my first like 200K month, I was fucking making $0 before that. It was weird. Like I wasn't shocked. I was like, yeah, like it just, it, this, this, this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And it still is, there definitely is a surreal aspect to it. Like it is really cool. But I wasn't like, there's no way. Like like that, I think is very negative. I think that if you have that, that's a sign that there is a sort of imposter syndrome going on where your identity hasn't yet matched your outer world, and then you might regress back to your identity. Where if you have certain outcomes, there shouldn't be a sense of shock, in my opinion. There should be like, yeah, like I work for this. Like this is just who I am. Like I am somebody who is successful, and I'm somebody who has become this sort of person where 200K months and more are just a byproduct of who I am, right? So like I don't ever worry about this ever going away. I think if you do, then that is something to definitely, that's something that you should definitely analyze and ask yourself, like, why is it that you feel like this might go away? Because this just goes back to lottery paradox. A person wins the lottery, they're in disbelief, like, oh my God, like this is so insane. How am I going to keep this? And they just lose it, right? Like, because they can't actually hold, they can't hold that success. Their identity hasn't, they don't have the proper scaffolding to hold a fucking like a 3,000 pound like rock, for example, right? Like that's a massive thing. You need a lot of scaffolding to hold that. Whereas if you do have the proper scaffolding and the outer world, and you do see like this massive windfall and the outer world does match, it's just more so like, yeah, like this is something I'm doing. For me, it's like when I hit the 200K, like I was like, I want to be a lot more than this. Not even on a, not only on a financial side, or on the financial aspect of things or monetary aspect of things, because I think that's quite irrelevant, but just like on a bigger level. Like I just wanted to create something bigger than what I'm doing right now, and I want to do bigger things. And like when I think of the money, for example, it's just like, yeah, it's just gonna be a byproduct, but it's never like a sort of, oh man, like is this, yeah, there's definitely isn't a limiting belief there. And I don't think I do have, I genuinely don't think I have any when it comes to that, like what I could do. If yeah, like I think that when it comes to me being like the biggest in the space, I think I can do it. You know, like, and I know that I will eventually. Come back to this in like 2 years.
Same here.
Yeah,
Same.
exactly, bro. Like there's just, and you should and it's crazy because when you really do embed that belief within your self schema, it's just a matter of time until it just happens, right? It's just crazy. Like it's so fucking weird, but yeah, like all of these limiting beliefs are completely illusory, and they're so they've either been told to you by somebody, um, or yeah, like probably just told to you by somebody, or you've just probably heard somebody say it to somebody else. That's what it was. It's literally just fairy dust. Like it doesn't exist. Like whatever these limiting beliefs are that you have about yourself are actually just completely fake. And it's so crazy because again, people really do stack the rocks on that side of the scale, and they truly believe that like, no, there's no way I could actually like, I don't know, make this amount of money or look like that. Or it's like, no, like it's it's like when you see that these things match the inner and outer world, it's it's just so crazy, and I guess sad to see that people don't see it this way. People actually believe that there are limits. It's like, fucking what, bro? Like what's a limit? You know what's the limit? Even when I say this too, um, yeah, like even with my anxiety, again, like there's no reason why like the anxiety should persist forever, right? So again, like I need to, like that's definitely something for me to examine. It definitely something for me to examine, and worth questioning, because yeah, like again, when you truly believe that you have an outcome, right? And this just goes back to the paradigm of that I talk about often is be do have versus have do be.
You do have.
Yeah, so I mean, most people live within the paradigm of have, do, be. So, like, I have to have the thing to do something else to become this sort of person. So, a good example of this is you'll ask somebody, like, hey man, like when do you think you're gonna start working out? And they say, I don't know, like w- when I have more energy or when I'm more fit. And I mean, you'll look at them weird, right? You'll be like, what do you mean? Like when you're more fit, like you need to actually start working out to become fit or to have more energy. Like the reason why you don't have energy is because you don't work out. Or the person who you ask them like, hey man, like when do you think you're gonna start that business? And they're like, oh, when I have more capital, like when I have more money. It's like again, like it's like you need to start the business to actually have money, right? Um, and so they believe that like once I have the energy or once I have a nice body, then I'll go do the working out, or then I'll go just like start the business, and then I'll become the person. Then I'll become fit, right? Whereas you need to like this paradigm is just a complete lie, where you need to flip the script, right? You need to become the person first, right? Like on an identity level, become a fit person, truly believe that you are that person, and to the point where like you should be like borderline delusional about it. Like when somebody asks you like, hey, like even if you're not like fit on an external level, like you haven't actually had the outcomes yet, you should be able to say like, yeah, I'm a fit person. Like you truly believe that about yourself.
Yeah.
And then you'll naturally do the things, right? So you become that person. This is your natural state of being. You'll naturally do the things that that person would do, a fit person would do. And then you'll have those things. You'll have the fit body, right? You'll have the good body. You'll have the business. So yeah, like, and I guess again, it's so crazy because 99.9% of people live within the first paradigm, the have do be. I have to have the thing to do something else to become the person, and no, it's just false. You need to become the person on an identity level, and you will see that the outer world just matches, right? You will always see that like once you become that person, the outcomes just follow, right? And that's a fit person is a perfect example of this. A person who was once, let's say, overweight begins to really believe that they are a fit person. Their identity changes on that level. They actually begin to value things, and over time, they lose the weight. Right? Like that's just a good example of it. People have reversed the script, and if they don't do that, they'll regress. They'll usually regress. So like if you take two people, one person wants to lose weight, and both people want to lose weight. I put them both in a caloric deficit. However, one person says, I'm going to lose weight because I am healthy. And the other person says, I'm going to lose weight because I'm fat. They both lose weight. One of them actually keeps the weight off. Which one keeps the weight off?
The one who's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Because a person who believes like I'm going to lose weight because I'm fat, they, if, again, their identity still is constructed on the uh, presupposing the belief that they are just like an unhealthy person, right? So, and they just like fall back to that. Um, yeah. So again, just like to kind of like loop this circle. I don't feel like I'd have any limiting beliefs when it comes to the things that I can do. Um, and yeah, like anxiety shouldn't even be a part of that either. Like I don't know why that's funny. Like I'm glad you kind of brought that up, and it's something that I guess I haven't questioned enough. I guess just because it's been a long time since I guess my derealization was just so traumatic. Um, that yeah, like it is very embedded within my self concept, like that anxiety that arose from it afterwards, and that kind of stayed for the ride. But yeah, there's no reason why I shouldn't go. But when it comes to other things, like what I can actually, I guess, achieve, not that getting over anxiety is not an achievement, but the other things, I just feel like I don't think I don't feel like I have limits, there.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, in terms of your anxiety,
Mhm.
what do you think it's trying to tell you? Or
Mhm.
what good do you
Mhm.
think can come out of your anxiety?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually when my anxiety arises, it's to, I mean, uh, yeah, like there's a lot of ways that I've dealt with my anxiety, and now it has become a sort of gateway now, and it's been very useful. And
Yeah.
I used to be its prisoner. I'm no longer its prisoner. I guess it's more of a, when it comes, it is usually guiding me towards something that I need to be looking toward.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so again, like it's usually like a manifestation of like the protector or the saboteur, right? Who just wants me to be okay, wants to be heard and seen, and maybe saying that certain things need to be done, um, which is completely reasonable, right? And by observing that, and yeah, just sitting with that sensation, it's been very, yeah, like it hasn't affected me as the way that it used to. It used to be very, very scary. But again, anxiety is very interesting. Where I mean, the way that I really just got over it completely, and like to the point where it just didn't affect me, was was by simply noticing that it was just a sensation, like any other sensation that it was arising in consciousness.
Right. Yeah.
A good example of this is, w- for example, if I'm at the gym and I'm lifting like a heavy weight, right? Like and there are a ton of associated phenomena that arise with that. So like I'll have like a painful, let's say I'm doing bicep curls and my bicep begins to hurt and I start breathing hard. And if I breathe really hard, like my throat might taste like a little bit like metal. Um and I start sweating. That is an experience in itself. Okay. And so if I'm now in traffic, say, and I'm sitting down in traffic and I experience that same sensation, I'm probably going to call the like ambulance.
Right.
But the sensation itself is the exact same.
Mm.
So nothing has changed
Right.
there. The only thing is like, yeah, like obviously the context is different, but the actual sensation is the exact same. There's nothing different there. And so anxiety in a very similar way is just a sensation that is arising, just like any other sensation. And by being able to sit with it and by noticing that, I mean, something that I've learned is that fear exists within the vague. And if you actually, and the way that this relates to anxiety is that anxiety seems like this very ominous thundercloud, right? That's coming towards you, and you're seeing this thundercloud, and it's just very scary to look at. But when you actually go into the thundercloud, you just realize it's water vapor, right? Like there was actually nothing there. So in the same way with like any of these sensations that arise within consciousness, if you get closer to the actual sensation and you try to actually make contact with the sensation, you begin to realize that there was just nothing there. That it was just a sensory phenomenon. And yeah, that is a, I mean, this is kind of like the doorway to Buddhism, is by being able to observe all of these things that arise and fall away, you realize that yeah, there is nothing more than the pure sensation. And what anxiety is, and what all suffering comes from, is when the conceptual mind begins to take over
Yeah.
and begins to try to interpret these feelings in like with language, like, oh, this anxiety must mean something. What is this sensation? Or not even this anxiety, the sensation must mean something. It must mean anxiety. It must mean bad things. Whereas if you just sit with the sensation before the conceptual mind takes over, right, there's a gap between like sensory phenomena and like the conceptual mind. In that gap lies like freedom, where you can just sit with it and you realize that there was just nothing there, right? Pain and suffering are very different things. You can have a lot of pain and no suffering, right? Like you can go to the gym and incur a lot of pain without suffering, but you can also suffer with no pain either. There are many instances where you can just have psychological suffering because you're thinking about a thought, or you're thinking about that one time where that one person called you fat, and like you want to say that back, and then now you're in the car and you want to crash the car because like that's suffering, right? But there's no pain there. So like they are mutually exclusive and unrelated, pain and suffering. And the big thing there is, like, just going back to pain, is pain is just is a sensory phenomenon. And I mean, it was, interestingly enough, when I got my tattoo done, and this was when I was meditating very heavily. I've been meditating for about 4 years now. But during this period, I was meditating very heavily because I forget actually why. There was a reason why. I think it was like a harder period during my life. Um, and when I was actually getting the tattoo done, and I was trying to get closer to the actual sensation of the
Yeah.
pain, the suffering just completely disappeared. It was very weird. Like there was no suffering left, and it was just a sensation.
Yeah.
And so you can do this with any sort of sensation in general, is if you just get close enough to it, you'll see that it was all in it was thought. It's thought about the pain that creates suffering. Like even as something as extreme as like somebody stabbing your leg. If you try to get closer to the actual sensation, you'll see that the sensation itself isn't causing the suffering. It's the thought about the sensation that is. Although that can sound quite crazy on the surface, but yeah. So, anyways, back to my anxiety. Yeah, I do think that oftentimes it just wants to be heard and seen. And when I acknowledge it, it will usually calm down. Sometimes though it doesn't, and even still, I'm now able to at least sit with it and acknowledge it in a. I see it as almost as a friend, you know. And to see anxiety as a friend as someone to sit down with and hang out with, and just see it as somebody who just wants to hang out and come along for the ride is extremely is yeah, like very lightening. Um, and you just feel lighter. And you just see it as a companion of sorts, where it's not trying to actually hurt you, but it's just trying to um yeah, just like just hang out. And that reframe also helped me a lot. It's so funny, like when you begin to reinterpret things again, this goes back to the car example, where like the sensation is the same, but just like a simple context change or reinterpretation of it can change the experience itself. Um, and the way that experience affects you, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, change your perspective and reinterpreting it.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And you were talking before about your goals and
Mhm.
how like one thing that really caught my attention was you said you want to write a book.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's a lot of things I want to write about. Um, Probably in 2027 I'll begin. 2026 is more so just to focus on what I'm doing right now. Um, yeah, I definitely want to write a story about my derealization. I think that's probably like the most profound story of my life, and that's the reason why I'm doing all of this in the first place. Is my derealization, and I think it's something that yeah, the world as a whole has kind of ignored, and only certain people have experienced. Very few people have experienced, and it was yeah, I think there's just a lot to be said there on a more philosophical level as well, and what the implications of it are. That's one thing. I definitely want to speak about identity and yeah, the sort of realizations that I've come to over time. Um, and yeah, like intertwining subjects of the subjects or domains of neuroscience, psychology, um, philosophy, within a book. And I mean, there's just a lot that I want to talk about, I guess. That I'm excited to speak of. But yeah, do I know exactly what that will look like right now? No, I don't. Yeah, but I do want to get my PhD is what I know is I'll definitely continue pursuing knowledge in general. And I don't think knowledge needs to be pursued within the context of a classroom, but uh, for me, I find it very useful. With specifically with regards to philosophy and getting to know like an 85-year-old prof who's just been reading his whole life is very, very valuable. So yeah, that's something that I will continue, for sure.
Yeah, man, I feel like you could write like 30 bucks.
Shit.
No, I'll be your first reader for sure. What are some of your other goals right now? You want to be the biggest in space?
Yeah, yeah. I think
No, you don't want to. You're going to.
I'm going to. Yeah. With
You
my
are.
yeah, I am exactly. Yeah, there you go. Um, yeah, I wanted. I do want to be the biggest. I just want to be the person that people refer to when they think of the word identity. You know, within at least like the newer generation, like yeah, like Aamer Janbey is the guy to go to. I wanted to be that sort of authority, and I think I definitely can be, and I will be.
100%.
Um, yeah, and then uh, I mean, yeah, there's mm, for man, my goals, like I guess like the big that's like the big one, and with that will come a lot of things like with my business and so on. I think those are just like, again, those are just kind of byproducts of the person I want to become.
Yeah.
I just want to become, yeah, like I just want to continue to learn really, like, and continue expanding my knowledge, and with that, I think will come all the outcomes that will follow as I actually do that. As I continue to learn, and I don't see that ever stopping. Um, and yeah, like, as for like tangible goals, I mean, like, it's funny, like the reason why I kind of like, mm, on a small scale, kind of like dodging it, is because like the it's like what I want to do with my business, and what I want to do with like elevation is, I feel like those are like like still like small scale. Like I still feel like they're small scale. Like I'm like looking, I'm genuinely looking further than that, and I want to look
I
further than
love
that.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Like I don't care about like doing like millions of dollars per month. Like like for me, like that's just small scale. Like I'm looking at something much bigger. Like I want to like change the world is the goal. I want to be able to change the paradigm in which everyone views everything, right? Like just like identity, and achieving things, and success, and and how they relate to themselves. That's what I want to do. It's not so much, yeah, I want to make like a few $1 million per month, or I want to have like 50,000 people in elevation. It's like it's again, I feel like those are still, it's like it's just small. Like it's I don't know. It's just like I just know that's still small, and I think it's very important for anyone to, yeah, like, and this was something that I was kind of alluding to earlier, which is that my goals, I guess, have just become so much greater than I thought once possible. Like I used to think, yeah, like I do want to make millions of dollars per month, and I do want to have this amount of people in elevation. I do want to become like a bigger creator within the space. Like not the biggest, but I want to become. It's like no, like I just want to become. I know that I could. I want to get to like Tony Robbins level. I want to kind of impact the world in that way. But from a different sort of angle, a different lens, a more philosophical, existential lens. Um, yeah, and with that, you can kind of imagine everything else that comes with that on a more tangible level. But that's not what I care about anymore.
Yeah, that's so inspiring, man, and I've got no doubt about it.
Thank you.
So the last question that I like to ask to all the guests that come on here, and I recently changed it. It's so I want you to think of your younger self in your hardest time, and think of one message for that version of Amber.
Hmm.
And what would that message be?
I think it would be what I have written here on my hand, which is Amor fati, which is love your fate,
Yeah.
and not to only accept what happens to you. A lot of people, I mean, first, most people resist what happens to them, and they're like, "Why me? Why me? Why me? Like, why is this happening? There's no way this is happening." And some people accept their fate. They'll be like,
Yeah.
"Okay, fair enough. Like, I'll accept it." And then some people actually love their fate, right? To really actually sink into the feeling of truly loving what's happening to you, regardless of how difficult it is. Um, there's a reason why it's happening, and there's a deep reason that you should love, right? No matter what it is, like no matter how awful it is, no matter if it's somebody that you've lost in life, to actually love it. And it can sound very weird at first glance. Like, what do you mean? How can I, if I were to tell myself derealizing 5 years ago, you should, you should just love it's okay, Amber, just love your fate. I would look at myself weird, but that really is the truth, is understanding that regardless of how hard the the current situation is that you're going through, um, that there is a way to find solace in it, and to be able to sit in it, and to, yeah, to really love it. And I guess like we constantly find ourselves looking over the shoulder of the present moment, trying to, thinking that the next breath or the next action or the next thing that we do is going to alleviate right now suffering, right? Like after this, I might think, man, I'm gonna get a drink of water, and then I'm gonna be punch up my thirst, and then after that I can go take a walk. It's like I'm constantly leaning forward. We all are constantly leaning forward in life. Again, we're always looking over the shoulder of the present moment, and to simply see that we're doing that, um, I think is very important, and to no longer to try to sit in the moment as it is, and to try to just enjoy what's happening right now. Because as Sam Harris would say, and as other people within the world of Buddhism, is you have arrived as it is. Like there is nothing, there is, you're not going to arrive in the future. You have arrived now. Like this moment right now is it. It's never going to be the next moment because you're never in the next moment. You're always here right now. So I think that there's an intimate link between that and loving your fate and being able to sit in what's happening right now. Um, and yeah, not to look over the as I said, the shoulder of the present moment.
I love that, man.
Thanks, man.
Perfect way to end it. You have arrived.
You have arrived.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Amber.
Of course.
Had such a good time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sam. Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And where can people find you?
Instagram. Yeah, Instagram would be the main place to go. Aamer Janbey with two. I gotta spell that out. Aamer. That's two A's. Everyone spells it wrong, and then Janbeyy for the account. That's the main place. You'll find out what I'm doing from there.
And if somebody got value from this and they want to learn more about how to change their identity and how to rewire their mind to make it change their life or get farther in their business, where should they go?
I mean, I am releasing a pretty. I've been working on something for a long time. And I'm releasing it on February 9th.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's going to be essentially like a full sort of system that I've built and created and guiding people through. It's going to take about 3 months. So if you're here before February 9th or even after, that's something that I definitely recommend. I think it'll really help. So yeah, that would be the place. And then from there, you can figure out other places to go, in terms of the things I can provide.
Well, that's perfect. So if someone's interested in that, should they just like look up your Instagram and then follow you?
Yep. Yeah. Instagram, follow me, and then they'll see that. Just DM me Elevate, for example. And we'll be in contact pretty quickly.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate you coming on.